Hey everyone, this is Mr. Isometric, and recently I made a video regarding how to learn Blender in 2025. Now, after making that video, I felt like I should make a beginner friendly tutorial series for Blender. Not that there are already massive Blender beginner tutorials, but I think I will go a little bit slower than those, and we will learn things from a very different perspective, something that when I was learning I wish someone taught me like that. So I will try to go in that way. So this tutorial series will be different because we are going to go into a very minute details on where the things are in Blender and how to remember them. Also, we will go in two ways. We will first try the manual approach, and then I will tell you the shortcut of it. In that way, you will know the both ways of doing it. Also, whenever you do things manually first and then go ahead and do it with a shortcut, the chances of you remembering that is much higher. Yeah, in this series, we will learn how to navigate inside Blender, and we are going to touch every sector of Blender, something that a beginner will definitely need. Doesn't matter if you want it for game development or rendering, things that we are going to touch, they are going to be in series, and I will always keep my titles very clear, and I will also tell what kind of tutorial that is going to be, like what on topic. So you can totally skip the videos that don't feel like you need in your workflow, and then you can watch the videos that are in your workflow. So yeah, so this video is like intro and some prerequisites that you might need before you start this tutorial series. So as you can see, my Blender looks a little bit different than yours. So I have changed some things. So with the add-ons, so the first thing is in Blender version 4 and above, we have, if you go into the edit and then preferences, Blender preference window open up. And now previously there was just one tab add-ons. Now we have get extensions. So if some things are missing in your Blender, like some add-ons you can't find them, you can totally find them in get extensions tab. Some things are in add-ons only. So we are going to talk about both of them. So the first thing is, let's talk about get extensions. Now get extensions, I have this many add-ons turned on. Now you don't need all of them. Now Blender Kit online asset library. Now this is a very useful thing. You can get a ton of resources for free and for paid in your Blender with the Blender Toolkit add-on. Now as you can see, I can see the car models, and then if we go further, you can find all sorts of assets that you want. If you don't want asset, you just want materials, you can get all kind of different materials if you want. You can also search a specific thing. You can get scenes in Blender, you can get worlds in Blender. So these are basically HDRIs that you can use for lighting, and this brush section is for alphas and textures, which are very useful in sculpting. Now all of this is available for free and for paid in Blender Toolkit. Now let's go back into edit preferences. Now as you can see, I have bool tools turned on. So this is a boolean shortcut. This is something that you might not need as a beginner, but you can totally use it. So turn it on, we will use it later in the tutorial. Extra curve object, extra mesh object. Now this thing, whenever you press shift A and you go into your mesh section, you'll see that you have this basic shapes available for you, and I think you might get till rounded cube, I guess. But with the extra mesh objects, you get all of this extra stuff, which is very useful in some cases. And then extra curves, as you might have seen. So with the curves, I think you are limited to fur, but with extra curves, I think you get this knot, spirals, and some profiles. And there is one more thing, loop tools. Now loop tools is another useful add-on that is basically used to manipulate the geometry. Very useful, but you might not need it as a beginner. But turn it on again, because we will be needing that in intermediate series. Magic UVs, again, just turn it on. Screencast keys, you don't need them. I just turned that on so that you guys can see what keys I'm pressing. Suppose if I'm holding shift and then I'm using middle mouse button, so you can totally see that on that corner over there. It registers everything, even my keystrokes, like whatever I press registers that. So in the add-on section now, you can see that I have BioVision BVH format. If this is turned on, just keep it. We are not going to use that. Next is Cycles Render Engine. If you have this turned on, by the way, Cycles Engine is an add-on. which is really weird to think about, but yeah, it is an add-on and you can turn it on and off. Okay, so Node Wrangler is something that you should definitely turn on. You will need it as a beginner and intermediate in every level. It will just make your life easier using the shader editor and geometry node. Retopoflow is the external add-on. It will not be available in Blender, and you also don't need it right yet. So if it is not there, don't worry about it. Yeah, rest of the thing, they are enabled by default. So these are the prerequisite. Also, if your Blender scene has some mesh objects like a cube, suppose it also has a plane, so this is a default scene in Blender that you get. So you also might have a camera like this. If you don't want to delete them every session, like select everything, X delete. If you don't want that, just delete everything, just the way I did right now. So you need to go in files, default, and then save startup file. So this right now, whatever you see right now in the screen, this will be saved as my startup file. So if I do that and do override, now if I go to file, new, and create a general scene, let's not save anything. So as you can see, my Blender, it doesn't have those extra, like the objects by default which are there, they are not there anymore. In this way, you don't have to delete them every session. But if you like deleting that, don't do, I guess, whatever we just did. These are all the prerequisites that you need for future tutorial series. Now, at any point, if you feel like you're stuck or you have any doubts, you can obviously ask them in comment section below, or you can join my friendly community for 3D. If you are a game developer, do join. If you are a Blender user, do join it. So the link will be in the description below. And if you want to support this channel, definitely subscribe, like, and share. But if you want to support it a little bit more, you can go ahead and do that on Ko-fi. On Ko-fi, I put Blender files. So if I feel like this Blender file is useful, I will put it on my Ko-fi for free for you all guys. That's it for this prerequisite video, and I'll see you in the next Blender beginner tutorial series part. Till then, if you want to watch some other tutorials, go ahead. I'll see you in the next video. Hey everyone, so welcome to the first part of beginner friendly tutorial series for Blender. So in today's video, we are going to talk about how to navigate inside Blender, and we are also likely going to talk about what are all these panels that you see around you. We will learn them in deep as this series goes on. So in today's video, we are just going to talk a little bit about Blender and what stuff is where. If you have any doubts, you can ask them in the comment section below, or you can join my Discord server. Yeah, and please make sure to support this channel by subscribing. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing you can see over here, the cube at the center of the screen, and when I press my left mouse button, I can select it. Quickly, I will just turn on my screencast keys add-on. Now, as you can see on the bottom left corner, you can see which keys I'm pressing right now. So I'm pressing the N key right now, and it is opening this properties panel. So this is my properties panel. Most of the times when you install add-ons, they probably might show over here. Some add-ons can show on the top like this. As you can see, Retopoflow add-on, this is showing over here. This is a Blender Toolkit add-on, it is showing over here. Now I have talked about what add-ons I have enabled in my Blender version in my previous video, the prerequisite video. So if you haven't watched that video, do check that out, and that will answer your question about why my Blender looks a little bit different than yours, and also the way you are going to follow this video tutorials. I have made a video on how to learn Blender in 2025, so do check that video out as well if you want, or else you can just watch this video entirely. So now I can select my cube with a left mouse button. I can just hover over it and click on it. But what else can I do? So I can look around this cube. So if you hold down your middle mouse button like this, I can rotate around that cube if I move my mouse up and down. So if you have your Blender opened or you're just watching it, just keep in mind that middle mouse button is to look around. Can I go closer to this object? I totally can. Just select the object and hold down your control button, middle mouse button, hold that as well. And then if you drag your mouse up, you can see that I'm getting closer to the object. And if you drag your mouse down, you can see I'm getting far away from the object. So now I can look around the object. I can zoom in and zoom out. in Blender, there are two types of zooming in and zooming out. First is holding down control middle mouse button and dragging your mouse like this. So this is called zooming in. So you cannot zoom infinitely inside anything. So if I get like a little bit more closer, as you can see, my zooming stops over here and I can't zoom in anymore. So what you have to do in that case is hold down your control middle mouse button, get a little bit far away. Now I can zoom in properly. So this time we are going to dolly inside the object. So dollying closer to the object in this way, get closer to the object without that limitation. Now for that, you have to hold down control and shift and then hold down middle mouse button, and then you can drag your mouse up, and now I can dolly in. Now I have gotten very close to this corner. So I can now zoom in and zoom out for precision zooming in and zooming out. So dollying doesn't have any constraint, but zoom does have a little bit of constraint to it. So as you can see, it's getting a little bit hard to zoom right now. So I'm gonna dolly in into this corner like this. And now I can precisely zoom in and zoom out. Basically, I use zooming for getting closer to an object with some precision. And I use dolly to like quickly get closer to any object, okay? Now, there is one more thing. You can move around your viewport. Now, what is a viewport? So this screen that you see right now, so you're going to spend 90% of your time over here. So this viewport itself is like a camera in a 3D environment. So we are right now rotating and moving that camera around that object. So this is called a viewport camera. So remember that. Now there is one more operation that you can perform, which is panning. Now to pan, you have to hold down shift key and then middle mouse button. And then as you can see, I can pan around that object. So I'm just gonna get a little bit far away so that we can pan easily. Now, as you can see, I can pan and I can pan it in any view direction. So if I go like this, then I can pan it like that. So I can basically move my viewport camera at a certain location with respect to whatever object that I have selected. If you haven't selected any object, Blender will automatically take reference of the last object that was selected, and it will probably move in that way. So now I can rotate around the object, I can zoom in and zoom out, dolly in and dolly out, and I can pan around the object. Okay, so these are the three major navigation practices that you are going to do to move around any object or move around in the scene. Now let's talk about flying and walking. So if you have a massive scene in Blender, you can hold down shift and tilde key. Now this key is, I guess, on the left side of your number key. So once you do that, your mouse is going to be free form for rotation. So I am moving my mouse right now and you can see a crosshair at the center. So we are in the flying mode right now, and I can press W to like walk front or like fly in the front. If I press Q, I go down. If I press E, I go up. S to go back, and it is camera dependent. So if I'm looking down, I'm going to go behind that direction. Now if I hold down shift and then press W, you'll see that my speed has increased. So it is almost like sprinting in a game. And if I hold down control, then my speed becomes much slower. Also, you can, at the bottom, you can see Blender has given you all the tips. So my bad, I said control, but in the tips section, we can totally see that you have to press down Alt to go slower. As you can see, we are going slower. If I remove the Alt key, we are going at the normal speed. If I hold down shift, we are going at the fast speed. Okay, toggling gravity, I think it is for tab. So if I press tab, as you can see, we are falling down, and it will fall down until we are colliding with any object. So let me just position myself above this cube, and let's see if we interact with that cube. So yeah, I have fallen down on this cube, and now I can walk around on that cube. Okay, so you have to press tab again so that we get out of the gravity mode. So all the things that you can do are at the bottom, and you can stop previewing this like this. Like you can stop this fly mode by just pressing right mouse button, and you'll go back to your default position. in Blender, you can cancel anything just by right clicking. So most of the time, you'll see, like, suppose you accidentally grabbed this. Instead of confirming it by pressing your left mouse button, you can just press right mouse button again and it will cancel that operation totally. So it will just go back the way it was. So, but if you go ahead and grab this and you press left mouse button and you confirm the position, you can still go ahead and press Ctrl Z. That will undo everything. But if you wanted that change back, I think you can press Ctrl Shift and Z. So it will redo everything. So everything is on your left hand. So all the controls are on your left hand mostly. So modeling becomes easy like this. So yeah, by the way, I went into the edit mode. If you want to manipulate any mesh, you can go directly into the edit mode pressing tab like this, or you can go on the top and click on edit mode. And now I can make changes to mesh. The way I was making changes to mesh was pressing G, so I grabbed it by pressing G. But I think it is too much for the first video, so we are not going to go deep into that. Now that you know how to navigate inside Blender with some basic navigation, let's just briefly talk about what these windows are and what are these different tabs. So the first thing that we talked about, this is your viewport, and in this viewport you are going to basically work around. You're going to add stuff over here, you are going to manipulate stuff over here, and we are, as you can see, we are in a layout mode. So if you go into the modeling mode, as you can see, we don't have to go into the edit mode by pressing tab. You can just get over here in the modeling mode and you can change your mesh. You can go back into the layout mode, but I personally feel pressing tab and going into the edit mode much more convenient. If you are going to sculpt anything, you can directly go into the sculpt mode and you can start sculpting with all these brushes over here. UV editing, if you want to do UV editing, this is our 3D mesh and this is the UV unwrapped model. We will talk about this later in future. This is for texture painting. So if you want to texture your object, you can do that over here. Like, these are all the shortcuts, by the way, which you can use. Now going into shader editor, we are on Eevee. Okay, this can be a little bit heavy if your computer is not that good, so it might lag just a little bit. So here you can add materials and things. This is the animation tab. If you want to animate anything, you go over here. So in general, all of these tabs that you see, they are just convenient little shortcuts that you can use to go in different modes quickly, or else you can just go ahead on top left corner and you can switch to all those modes from over here without changing this layout window. So you can switch to all of these modes and we will talk about them in future as we go on. Okay. Now let's talk about this window over here. This is called as outliner. If you want to know what window is called, you just have to hover over this icon of everything and you'll know what it is called. So this is our properties panel. This is our outliner. So in outliner, everything that is in the scene, it is available in outliner. So over here, if I select the cube, you can see that that cube is also selected in the outliner. And if I do the opposite, if I click on the cube, it is selected in the viewport. So if you add anything, it will also show in outliner. But I don't think you can add any asset directly in the outliner. Now there are really cool properties inside outliner that we will talk about later. But just for your information, everything that in the 3D scene is, it is available over here as well. Now the properties panel. Now this panel helps you to change some settings, manipulate the mesh and add some behavioral changes. So this contains all the properties and whatever slider, whatever value that you need to change, you can change it over here in these panels. We have our scene properties. Now as you can see, if you hover over here, it says scene. So scene has its own render properties. So this is referring to all the render settings. Now this is related to all the output settings of the render. View layer, it is related to render as well. The scene, now it is talking about all the scene that you see right now. World settings, so this is our modifiers tab. You are going to use this a lot. Particle system, I don't think people, I guess you can still use particle system, but geometry node probably has replaced this in a way. But if you don't want to go math heavy, then you can just use the particle system anyways. Physics tab is my personal favorite and I use this a lot in my day-to-day life. I have created a lot of animations with physics itself and it is really fun. Constraint blueprint are also some conditions that you can put on your mesh. You can animate with this, and you can also create some nice animations with it. Now this data and material, you'll probably not use data that much, but the material is something that you will use a lot. And texture also, if you are working inside Blender itself, like you are animator or renderer, then you are going to use this texture tab as well a lot. All the properties are over here. And this is our handy toolbar on our left. You can find all sorts of tools, and if you hover over them, you can see that it says move. So it is used to move your mesh around with the help of gizmos. Now I really like to use gizmo itself. There are shortcuts to move inside, like move object inside Blender. Like if you press G, then you can grab your object, and if you press any of the axis, suppose I press the x-axis, now it is constrained to the x-axis and it is moving over there. If you press Y, then it will move on the y-axis. If you press Z, it will move on the z-axis. Now doing that is okay, but you always have to keep in mind what axis your model is pointing at, and the great way is to just turn on the gizmo itself. Now this is a really handy way to know, like I know that blue axis is the z-axis because on the top you can see the z-axis is over there, red is the x and green is the y. So I can just move around things like this, and I feel this is much more easier for me. Now for rotating, I do use shortcuts. So rotate on the x, rotate on the y, as you can see, r and y, and then rotate on the z like this. I don't use gizmo for rotation and scale. I just use the shortcut. But the thing is, it is easier to visualize what axis I'm rotating it on, just the help of this gizmo. So I want to rotate my model like this. So I want to rotate around my y axis. So for that, all you need to do is press R and then press Y. And now your model is going to rotate on the Y axis like this. Now if I press R and if I press Z, as you can see, my model is rotating on the Z axis. And now if I want to rotate it on the X, you guessed it right, I have to press R and X and it is rotating like this. So all of these things will get built in your muscle memory the more you try to do it. So for the beginners, if you are trying to follow along, you can write this stuff down somewhere, or you can hover over here and you can see all the shortcuts. So the shortcut is R, as you can see at the end. The shortcut for this is G, as you can see over there. For this it is S. So S to scale, R to rotate, and M to move. Transform tool, it is the combination of all these tools over there, and it has everything in it. So you can rotate, scale, and move all at once. So usually I never used this. As I said, I just used my transform tool. Now this thing, the select box thing, it has 3 selection modes and 1 tweak mode. So if I set it to tweak and if I just grab this, as you can see, I can just grab objects just by left mouse button clicking on them. I don't have to press G anymore. But yeah, there is one more thing. You'll have, like, if you want to grab anything in a specific axis, then you need to be facing that axis. So if I just click on the X, I'm now looking at it from the sideways. So if I now grab it like this, it will not move in the X direction. It will just move in the Z and Y plane. So if you are looking at certain axis, then it will only move in that direction like that. You might have seen me resetting the position and scale right now. So I'll just tell you guys. So I'm pressing Alt. If you hold down Alt and if you press G, so it will reset its location. Hold down Alt, and so I just have to add some random rotation. Okay. So now this cube is randomly rotated. If I hold down Alt and if I press R, it has resetted its rotation. And if I scale this weirdly, if I hold down Alt and if I press S, it has resetted its scale. Now this will only work, like I grabbed it somewhere else. Okay. Now this will only work if it's if you go into the object properties. As you can see, it has some location. So this location is of this origin point, the dot that you see over there. So if this is not 0, it is something else. And if you press Alt G, as you can see, it goes to 0. if I rotate this cube on the Z, say 45 degrees, you know that this is rotated 45 degrees, and Blender knows it too because we haven't applied this rotation. So if I just press Alt R, it is just going to get 0. But if I go ahead and apply the rotation, you can make any of this 0, like location and rotation, and you can make scale 1 if you apply it to them. Now it is important practice to do, and we'll talk about it in future. So for now, to apply the rotation or scale or anything, you have to press Ctrl and A. If you press Ctrl A, this pop-up window will appear and it says apply. So I want to apply the rotation. If I apply the rotation, you can see this now has become its 0 degrees, or you can say this is now its main rotation, you can say. In this 3D world, now if I press Alt R, you'll see that nothing is happening. Now if I rotate it by minus 45 degree, you'll see now the Z is set to minus 45, and if I press Alt R, it goes back to that position. Okay, so we are just going to go ahead and apply the rotation again so that it gets back to its default state. So this is how you do some basic stuff in Blender. Now this were the navigation part. Okay, so the tweak is done. Now this 3 selection modes. Now these 3 selection modes are unique in themselves. So the first is box select. So as you can see, this cube, we have that cube in our scene. If I click and drag anywhere on the cube, that cubes get selected. Now this is viewport dependent. So if there is any object behind it, it probably might not get selected. But the thing is that only box select works like this. For circle and lasso select, as you can see, I'm clicking and hovering over all of those on this cube over here, and nothing is happening. But as soon as my cursor goes on this origin point of that object, it gets selected. So for the circle and lasso, you'll need to making sure that you are selecting its origin point. So as you can see, it doesn't matter how much area I cover of that box, it is not getting selected. You need to make sure that you are selecting it via origin. Now this doesn't work same in edit mode. So if I go into the edit mode, and by default it is set to box select, I can just select all the words. And as I said, it is view dependent. It will not select anything that is behind it. And the same thing goes for the circle select. So with circle select, anything, like I'm holding my left mouse button, by the way, and I'm selecting everything. And with middle mouse button, anywhere else in the scene or on the cube, you can rotate around and you can select. But as you can see that my selection is gone. So to prevent that from happening, what you can do is you can select stuff from this side, and then you can rotate around, hold down shift, and then select these things as well. So this way you can select multiple objects, or you can select multiple lines or vertices, whatever you want. Same thing with the lasso. Let's go in this view. Let's select everything. And as you can see, it didn't select this one. So I'm just going to hold down shift and select this one. So in this way, you can select multiple vertices with the lasso select. So you can toggle between them, by the way, by pressing W. So when you press W, you can see that these tools are toggleable. So I just like it to be on box select by default. So I have not seen a lot of YouTubers talk about 3D cursor, because 3D cursor is also a very useful thing in Blender. So suppose I'm just going to go ahead and make a shape. So I'm beveling this shape right now by Ctrl B. And as you can see, this face now has some direction to it. Now I don't know what that direction is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and hold down shift and then do right mouse button. And as you can see that my cursor is on that face. So now I can do shift A and then I can add things to it. But one more feature of the 3D cursor is that it can align itself to the planes. So as I said, I don't know what rotation this has. So I'm just going to click on the cursor, and orientation right now it is set to view. So if I click right now, as you can see, this cursor, it is now facing towards me. If I click on over there, it was facing towards me, by the way. Now this arrow was pointing towards me. Now if I click it over here, it is different. So 3D cursor, it also has its own location and rotation, and it is very useful because we spawn things on our 3D cursor. So if we add anything new in Blender, it is going to be spawned at 3D cursor's location. So as you can see, it spawned on that 3D cursor. So your 3D cursor position matters a lot. Now the orientation, why does the orientation matters? So I'm just going to change it to geometry, and if I do that and if I click, as you can see, it took the rotation of this face. If I click it over here, it took the rotation of that face. Now ignore this 0 point, like this smaller increment, you don't have to worry about it. If I click it over here, you can see we got the proper rotation. So if I now click on this, and if I do Shift A, and then suppose, let's say I added a cube again. Now my cube didn't take the rotation in the first try. So what I'm going to do is, you can see a line. If I change it to 3D cursor, now as you can see that my cube is now taking the rotation of the 3D cursor, and it is facing towards that direction. So it is a really helpful trick to use 3D cursor to model things along the normal of any faces that you might have created. Now I'm just going to press N and hold Shift S and then cursor to world origin to make my cursor go over there. Now the geometry and the transform itself. Now transform works a little bit different. So this transform is referring to this global and local transforms. Now we will talk about them later, because I think video has gone a bit too much apart from navigation, but still I think we will learn about them later. So for now, let's just say that this 3D cursor is used like that. We already talked about them. The annotations, we will talk about them in future, but you can just draw things on the screen like this with it. Measuring tool is a really great tool. And you can measure things in Blender like this, but there are workarounds that you can use to measure things. These are two new things that was added in Blender: add cube and add curve. Now if you click and hold, you can add basic geometry like this. Now you don't always have to make 3D cursor. So if I wanted to add a cube like this, all I have to do is click, leave my mouse, click again, and voila, you just created a cube normal to that. And this totally depends where my, like this mesh, the preview mesh that you see, it is taking the normal direction of that face, and it is going to create things like this. So now I can create a thing normal to this like that, and I can also create some other objects, which is a cylinder. So I can now create a cylinder like this. Now as you can see, it is becoming a oval. So if I hold down Shift, you can see that it is constraining itself on all the sides. And I'm just going to leave my mouse, and I'm going to leave my Shift key as well, and click left mouse button, and there you go, you just created a cylinder normal to that face. So that's how you use that toolbar in general. And I think this is good enough for this video. I guess we can talk about this timeline later. So this is basically your timeline, and we will mostly talk about it when we are animating things. So for now, you can totally ignore this window over here. So probably you might not get that amount of doubts in this video, but I can see some areas where you can get doubts. And I'm intentionally not clearing those things yet, because I want you guys to get some questions, so that in the next video, when I will clear those questions in the next video as well. So don't forget to ask your doubts in comment section below, or ask them in the Discord server. I will, in the next video, I will clear them. And yeah, for now, try adding stuff, try moving stuff around in Blender. Wait, did I not tell you guys how to add stuff? So you can totally go in the add section, mesh, and you can add all these things in Blender from over here. Just play around with the mesh, the primitive meshes, and then move around, scale them, try to create a little things. And if you created something with just this first tutorial, do submit that in the Discord server. I would gladly like to see and check them out, because there is a lot of things that can just be done with just this primitive tools. So yeah, if you want to support this channel, subscribe, like, and share. If you find it useful and if you want to support it a little bit more, you can go ahead and do it on Ko-fi. I upload Blender files over there, but I don't think there is anything useful for as in this Blender file, so I probably might not upload it. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Hey everyone, and welcome to another part of Blender beginner tutorial series. So in today's video, we are going to talk about how to model stuff in Blender and some tips and tricks related to modeling in Blender, and we will talk about some basic issues that you might face in Blender while modeling. Now we are going to go in depth in modeling in future after this series is completed, but as a beginner, just to get you started in your work, this tutorial is sufficient. So before we start, I would just ask you guys to like this video and subscribe to my channel to support me. And yeah, that's it. That's all I ask. And if you have any doubts, ask them in a comment section below, or you can join my Discord server. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing is, whenever you want to model anything inside any 3D software, you need to add primitive shapes in Blender. So to do that, the manual way is to go ahead on top left corner, click on add, and then you can add your primitive mesh. Now this primitive mesh, they are like your building block, or they are called as your base mesh. Now you can go forward from over here. So suppose if you want to make a rectangular table, you can create a cube. If you want to create a cylinder, like a circular table, you can add a cylinder. So you need to choose the primitive object that resembles close to what you want. So for now, let's just go ahead and add a cube in our scene. Now we have added cube in our scene. Now suppose if I want to remove this cube, you need to press X and you can delete that cube. And as you can see, it also got removed from our outliner. Now let's go ahead and add the cube back again, but this time we are going to use a shortcut. So shortcut is Shift A, which is like add menu, like get me the add menu. And you can see like it is very similar to the top panel because that's what we got over here. So Shift A basically is a shortcut to get that panel near your pointer, and then you can just go ahead and add anything you want. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and add a cube back again in our scene. Now, while modeling the scale, the challenge with the scale is something that you will face. I will show you how. So now we have a cube, and if I press N, you'll see that in the items section, this is our properties panel as we talked about in previous videos. So over here, you can see we have a scale of an object and dimensions of an object. So dimension shows the length of an object in meters. Now, if you want to change that, you can go to the scene properties, and inside units, you can change it to whatever you want. The length, you can change it to followings. So we will keep it at meters. By default, Blender works in meters. So I'm gonna keep it like that. Now, if I go ahead and scale this on the x-axis like this, you'll see that my scale has changed to some value, and then my dimension has changed as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a bevel modifier. Now what bevel modifier does is it adds this edge cuts, like it makes your edge a little bit smoother, and you can add segments, and then it makes your edge a little bit rounded. Now I can increase the amount. I will just decrease the scale, and as you can see that this bevel for beginners, it might look like, okay, so I guess this is what this modifier does. Actually, no, this is not the result should look like whenever you apply bevel. So it should be even on all the edges, but as we can see, it is even on this edge, it is even on this edge, but it is definitely not even on this edge. So now let me just disable this for once, and let's see what I mean. So if I now press 2 to go in the edge mode, by the way, you can toggle between vertex mode so that you can select each individual vertex. You can click on this second icon, or you can press number pad 2, and then you are in the edge mode, and you can like make changes to that, and the face mode by pressing 3, and you can now make changes to entire face. I will just stay in the edge mode for now, and if I go ahead and hit Ctrl B to bevel anything manually, you'll see that okay, it is beveling it, but it is beveling it more on this face than this face. Now if I select this edge over here, and if I hit Ctrl B, you'll see that it is again beveling it over here more than here, and I think it will keep on doing this But now if I bevel it over here, you'll see that it is evenly beveling on both this face and this face. So what's the difference? The difference is the scale. This is the reason why the scale matters this much. So what to do in this situation? Suppose the dimension, if you made it something like 6, you want to bevel this object. So first thing you are going to do is you're going to hit Ctrl A, and then you're going to apply the scale. And whenever you apply the scale, now if I turn on the modifier again, you'll see the difference between the previous one and this one. Now this has bevel evenly spread on all the edges. So if I increase and decrease the amount, you'll see that it is creating this beveled cube over here. Again, let's go ahead and remove this modifier, and let's delete this object. So now again, let's have another cube in our scene, and this time instead of scaling it in the object mode as we did last time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to edit mode. To select everything, I'm gonna press A once and then press S and X. Now this time I have scaled this object in the edit mode. Now while in the edit mode you can't see the dimensions, that's the drawback. But this time, as you can see, our scale remained 1. So whatever you do in the edit mode, like even if you rotate this thing, it will not get recognized over here. And like suppose in the object mode, if I do anything, you can see it is registering. But in the edit mode, suppose if I select everything again and then rotate it in a weird angle, then you'll see that my rotation, it is still 0, 0, 0. So in this way, whatever you do in the edit mode, you don't have to worry about the adjusting or applying the scale and rotation. But still, always make sure that whenever you make any changes, you go ahead and apply rotation and scale, or just scale by itself. Okay. So now let's talk about some modifiers that will help you model things in Blender. So widely used modifier is mirror modifier. I'm just going to add a cube again, and this time we are going to go into the modify section, and in the generate you'll see that we have a mirror modifier. Now if you don't want to find it like this again and again, you can just go to the search bar. The second option is mirror, but if you don't see it over there, just go ahead and press MIRROR, and you'll see that your mirror modifier is over there. So now how does mirror modifier works? Well, mirror modifier works with respect to origin. Now you can't see the change yet, but if I go into the edit mode now, select everything, and if I move it on the X, you'll see that there is another cube over there. Now if I go out of the edit mode, you'll see it is still over there, and both of them are one single object. Now if I go into the edit mode again, you'll see I can only manipulate this cube over here. The mirror modifier, it says that the axis is selected as X axis. You can select multiple axes if you want, and you can deselect multiple axes by just left mouse clicking on it. So our X axis, what does this mean? So it is mirroring about the X axis, as you can see. Now if I select the Y axis and disable the X axis, you'll notice that nothing has changed. And as I said, it is mirroring about its origin. So I have to select now everything and move it on the Y. So you'll see that right now it is mirroring about that origin point, and it is creating duplicated copy over there. Now to differentiate more, what I will do is I will go ahead and bevel this face, and as you can see, the bevel is on this side, so it is mirroring about Y. Now if I click on the X, you'll see that it has also created a copy over here. Now how is this useful? So if you are making a symmetric part which is symmetric on all the sides, then using mirror modifier should be your first thing. Now you can just select everything and then move closer to each other, and all you need to do is just work on one part and the other parts will take its shape. Okay, so let me go ahead and delete this, and let's make another example. Suppose, let's say I created a table, so let me just scale it down like this, and let's scale it on the X like this, and let's scale it on the Y something like this. Okay, now never forget to apply the scale because your scale is messed up. So Control A, apply scale, and my table is way high, so I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit like that. Now instead of adding another cube, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this one by Shift D. So whenever you duplicate anything, it will automatically be grabbed like this. So if you move your mouse, so just press right mouse button, it will cancel that operation. But now you will start wondering like which one is your object. So in the outliner, you can see that this is my duplicated object. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that. You can also rename your mesh, by the way. If you double click, you can just name it like leg or something. So now I have selected the leg object and I can move it down. Now the next thing is I want to scale it on the Y and X, not on the Z. So whichever axis you don't want to scale on, just do this thing. So press S to scale and then hold down shift and press the axis where you don't want to scale the object. So it is the Z axis and it will now scale on the X and Y simultaneously like that. Okay. Now I also want to scale it on the X like this, something like that. Okay, I will apply the rotation and scale. I didn't have to apply the rotation, but I applied it anyway. Now I will move it in this corner over here and let's scale it on the Z axis like this. Okay, so I like this length of the table leg. So I'm just going to hit apply scale again. Now I want this leg to be exactly on all the other three corners as well. So for that, I'm going to use mirror modifier. And as I said, the origin of our leg is over there. So in the mirror object, I'm going to click on this drop down and I'm going to select this top part. Now it has perfectly mirrored itself over there. And what does that did? So mirror object, it takes the origin of whatever object you have selected. So my table origin is exactly at the center, and if it is not for some reason, so suppose say your table origin has gone somewhere else, so I'm just going to apply the location and that didn't change anything, so I'm just going to select everything and move aside. And in this case, if I go ahead and apply the location again, you'll see that your table origin is over there, but you want your leg to be over there. So what to do in this case? First of all, you need to make sure that your scale is applied, because if your scale is not applied, this might give weird results. So right click after selecting your main object and then set origin to geometry. I use this a lot. So this will now center your origin to your object volume itself. Now I can also select the y-axis, and if I go into the edit mode, you'll see that this is my real object and this all three are the fake ones, but they still exist. So mirror modifier is a way to increase the speed of your modeling process, and yeah, this is how you can use it. Now there is one more thing. Suppose you want your origin to be over there. So in that case, what you should do is you can use an empty. Let me just mess up my origin point. Okay, now I'm gonna go into the edit mode and I'm just gonna select everything, and whenever you select everything, your cursor, like you see this gizmo, it goes to the center of that object. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and press shift S, and then I want my cursor to the selected. So whenever you do that, your cursor is going to snap to whatever your volume or whatever your wherever your gizmo is. Now I'm going to press tab again and get out of the edit mode. I'm just going to hit shift A, and then I'm going to add a plain axis empty. Now you can add any empty if you want. Plain axis is just something that I have added always. Now moving it up and down, it doesn't matter. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to, instead of mirror object being my cube, I can select my empty from the outliner, and as you can see now my empty is acting as the origin point. So wherever your empty is, it will be your mirror object. Now making it up and down doesn't really matter that much unless you are using the Z axis as well. So now the position of this matters as well. So you can now create something like this looks like pillars and columns. This is how mirror modifier works, and this is how it can be used in different ways. Now mirror modifier also has another feature, which is clipping. Now how does the clipping help? So if I go into the edit mode and if I move my object to the left, you'll see that my origin point is over there, and now I'm going to go ahead and add a mirror modifier. So this time without enabling the clipping, I'm gonna go into the edit mode and then I'm gonna push my object towards each other, and you'll see that they pass through each other instead of like clamping down at the center. And to clamp your mesh at the center, you need to turn on the clipping. Now, if I select the whole object and if I move it closer, you'll see that it has now stuck in the middle. It is not passing through. And once the object is clipped, so suppose, let's say if I go into the face mode, select this face and move it closer to each other, you'll see that now they are clipped together. And if I try to move it apart, you'll see that it is not happening unless and until you disable the clipping. And once you disable it, you can enable it again and you can move your face freely. But once it is clipped, it is clipped. And also one thing to mention, your mesh, it is like the face inside, it still exists, and it is not a good thing to keep that face inside, so it is better to just delete it. Now, how to see a face which is not even visible to your eyes? So this will affect whenever you try to bevel it or anything. So suppose, let's say if I select everything and if I bevel, you'll see that it is also beveling it inside, and you don't want to select the inside face. So you can either go ahead and hold down shift and you can manually select all the faces. And now if I bevel it, you'll see that it is still beveling the inside face, and I don't want that. So how do I see the inside face that I don't even know exists? For that, there are two ways. You can go into the X-ray mode, which is this one. So if you click on it, if you are experienced enough, you'll see that there is something at the center. And if you go now in the edit mode, you'll see there is a dot. Now each dot represents a face. Now if you are in a vertex mode, you'll see that those dots goes away, and this time it is kind of difficult to understand if there is a face or not. So to know if the face exists somewhere, you should be in a face mode, and we do see a dot over there. Now X-ray mode is not the only option that is available for you. You can also go ahead and, like in the edit mode, if you hold down Z key, you can see we get this pie menu. So we are now in a solid mode. Then you can change to wireframe mode. Now this is like the fastest way that I personally do things. So if you go into the wireframe mode, you can now see there is also a face over there. Now this pie menu, it is a shortcut for the above tools. So this is the wireframe mode, this is the solid mode, this is the material preview, and this is the rendered mode. All of those things, if you just hold down Z key, you can switch between them, and I find this much more useful and faster instead of going on top over there. So let's just go to the wireframe mode and select that face, hit X and F. Now we have deleted that face. Now deleting something in edit mode is different than deleting something in object mode. So if I click on tab and now I'm in the edit mode, I'll just switch to solid mode again. Now I'm in the face select mode. So if I select the face and press X, you can see I can either delete vertices, edges, faces, only edges and faces, only faces, and we can dissolve 3 of them. We can do a limited dissolve. Now these are all the things that you can do. Now what is delete vertex? So whenever I do this, you'll see that it has deleted these 4 vertexes, which are these top 4 ones, and as they don't exist, this face can't exist either, so it has just deleted everything. Now if I go ahead in the face mode and if I press X, now it is asking me to delete those edges. So if I delete the edges, you'll see that it has deleted the top selected edges, but it has kept this edges over here. Now to select them, we obviously need to be in the edge mode, and as you can see, we can select those edges. So now I'm gonna hit Ctrl Z to undo the thing. So let's undo it over there. Okay, now if I press X again and if I delete the face, you'll see that now we have made a hollow cuboid or something like that. So now I'm gonna go ahead and undo this as well. Now if I press X and if I do only edge and face, if I do that, now you might probably not see the difference, but if I just do only face, then it has kept that edge. Okay, so it only deleted the face and it has kept that edge over there. So deleting edge and face, so it will delete the edges and faces itself. So yeah, it is something that with experience you will know which one to use when. But for now, you can just stick to whatever this top three and you can work your way around. Now you can also duplicate stuff in edit mode as well. So if I select everything and if I press Shift D and if I duplicate, you'll see that I have duplicated this object and I can now move that object around. I can grab it, I can scale and do all sorts of things with it. I can rotate it as well. And if I disable the clipping and I can move this object apart, and then I can also, like, if I want a face over there, I can go in the edge mode again. Now if I want to select all of these edges at once, I can just hold down Alt and left mouse button. It will select the edge loop over there, and if I press F, it will fill up that face. So now this is how we are going to use mirror modifier in our workflow. Now I'm going to just go into the wireframe mode and select this whole object, go back into the solid mode, and then press X, and then we are going to delete the faces, so because we don't want that object anymore. So in this way, when I select everything and if I try to bevel it, you'll see that it is not beveling the center because there is no face over there. And now it has given me this nice bevel over there. Okay, so that's how mirror modifier works. And once you are done working with it, you can apply the mirror modifier or any kind of modifier by clicking on this arrow and then click on apply. So now let's talk about more mesh manipulation methods that you will need while you are modeling in Blender. So for that, I'm gonna go ahead and add a plane. Now this plane, let's go into the edit mode. Now I can extrude this plane. So if I select the edge by going in the edge mode and then selecting this edge, if I now press E to extrude, now I can extrude stuff like this, and I can move it around. Also, again, if I press E and then leave it by pressing right mouse button, you'll see that we have extra edge over there. And suppose you forgot about it. Let us say you try to add some modifier. Now this extra edge over there, it is going to create issues. It might give you weird results. So to avoid that, what you can do is you can select everything and then press M and do merge by distance. So it has now removed two vertices. Now those two vertices, which were this ones, they were close to each other. Now merge by distance works with a certain distance only. So if I now go ahead and extrude this, and if I keep it somewhat relatively closer but not that close, and now if I select everything, let me zoom in over there, and if I do M and merge by distance, you'll see that it will not remove it. But now there is a panel at the bottom left. Now if I select that and if I increase the slider, you'll see that anything above the range of that say 0.05, it is going to merge that. So this is how merge by distance works. Now instead of doing this, to avoid this thing like extruding, and then instead of having to merge by distance always, you can turn on auto merge option on. So it is over there. If you click on it, now if I go ahead and extrude this and right mouse button click, I can click over here again, and as you can see, it didn't merge itself. So how does auto merge works? So I can still go ahead and make it over there, but now again, if I move it a little bit closer, and let's move it a little bit more closer, and you'll see that it has now merged and there is no extra vertices. So it will not work in an instance. So if I extrude and right click, now I can totally move it around. And then if I select this edge and if I move it closer, a little bit more closer, and we can go till over there. Now we have to go absolutely close to it, something like this, and boom, it just got merged. Now, let us say that you don't want this vertex and you want it to be over there. So instead of grabbing it, you can just do an vertex slide or edge slide, whatever you want to call it. So if you press G, you can grab things, but if you press G again, you can see that it is sliding on that edge. Now you can either merge it over there, it doesn't matter. Now you can select multiple vertexes like this, or even you can select the edge itself like this, and if I press G, it is grab. If I press G again, you'll see that it is sliding on those two edges. I can just go till over there, and then it just got merged with that edge over there. As you can see now, it is a one single edge. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's dissolve this edge. So without changing the geometry itself, you can dissolve things. So if I press X again, you can dissolve this edge, and now we don't have that edge anymore. If you go into the vertex mode, you'll see that the vertex is gone as well. Now suppose say I don't want this vertex. So instead of sliding it, you can also go ahead and press X, and you can dissolve that vertex. So once you dissolve that vertex, you'll see that it has gone, but this vertex, it stayed. Okay, so now I want an edge in between this space. So to do that, you need a loop cut. So to do a loop cut, you can press Ctrl R, and then if you hover your mouse closer to this edge, or suppose say closer to this edge, now you'll see a yellow line. Now that yellow line is a preview of the edge that you are going to add. So if I now go over here, and if I left mouse button click, you'll see that now my arrow has changed. Now I can move this edge anywhere I want, but I want it to be exactly at the center. So I'm just gonna hit right mouse button like this, and it has snapped to the center from here to here. Now you'll also notice something, that this edge that we added, it is at slightly at an angle. So now if I select this, press X and dissolve that edge, and let's try that again. Okay, so if I now press Ctrl R, you'll see that I have added that edge again, and if I slide it closer to over there, you'll see that it is taking its angle, like it is trying to be parallel to that edge in the front. But when I slide it over here, you'll see that it is trying to be parallel to this edge now. So this is how whenever you add a loop cut, it will try to take the average shape between that face and that edge. So now if I press E again, you'll see that it is straightened up. It is not trying to take the shape, but it totally got merged with the bottom vertex. And if I move it more towards the right, it is trying to go till that vertex available over there. Same thing is happening till over there. Even after adding the edge, you still have an option to move that edge around. You can click on even, which we pressed E4, which is the shortcut. Now as you can see, if I disable the even, you'll see that it is not trying to be parallel to that edge over there. And with the factor, you can move it. So 0.5, or you can say 0 is the center of it. Smoothness, I think this affects when you have multiple cuts, and number of cuts is the something that you probably might need. So number of cuts, if you say 3, then it will divide your mesh into 4 equal parts, or you can say that it added 3 cuts that you can see. Now if I make it 4, it added 4 cuts, and something like that. So now this is how loop cut works. So suppose say I have another mesh, so I'm just going to duplicate this by Shift D, and I will move it over here. So now there are ways to join them both. Now let us say you need to make a face that is connecting these two different meshes. So first thing I will do is I will select this 4 vertices, and I can press F. This is one way. I'll just undo that. Now you can go into the edge mode. You can select this 2 and press F. And this is also another way of adding the face between them. Okay, so this happens a lot, and I have seen a lot of 3D models with this issue. Like in the edit mode, people just select everything and then they just delete everything and then they get out. Now you'll see that we do have an object, but it is almost nothing. It is just a origin point. Yeah, so this is like an empty object that has nothing in it. So it is just better to not delete anything. Like if you want to delete the whole object, just do it in object mode. Just press X and delete it. Okay, now there is one more thing. If I add a plane and go into the edit mode, and now let me just duplicate this plane over here. Now let us say I want to merge this vertex over there. So how would I do that? One way of doing it is select that vertex, select this vertex, press M to merge panel. Now you can merge at the center. The both vertices, they got merged at both their centers. So over there, Now there is also one more thing, merge at cursor. Now we do know our cursor is over there, so if I press M and do it at cursor, you'll see that both the vertices, they got merged at the cursor over there. If I merge it and do a collapse, now this probably will not work, and I think you should probably not worry about collapse yet. So if I press M now, do have two more options, which is merge at first and at last. This is the first thing that we selected, and this is the second thing that we selected. Now if I press M and if I do at first, you'll see that our this vertex got merged at the first vertex that we selected. And if I press M again and do at last, this vertex will go merged over there at that location, because that is what we selected. And even after that, you can still change it from over here. So I'm just gonna delete that, and let's do that same thing on a cube. Now we did that, did some operations on a plane. Now let's try to do same things on a cube. So let's go into the edit mode, and now I'm going to go ahead and first try a loop cut. So Control R for the loop cut. Now there is an equivalent tool for that as well. So over here you can see loop cut tool is available here. Now if I click on a loop cut, you'll see that it is previewing us a yellow line which represents where our loop is going to be. And now I can press left mouse button to confirm it. Okay, now as you can see that until I get out of this loop cut mode, it is going to keep giving me this option to split my mesh at the center. So I don't want to do that anymore, so I'm just gonna click on this gizmo again, and as you can see, we have now successfully added a loop cut on a cube. Now again, if I press G, I can grab that edge like this. I can even grab it on a specific axis like this. I can press G twice to get my edge slide over here. Now let us say that I make a duplicate of this cube. Okay, so Shift D X. Now I want to merge this face with this face. So if you want to merge all of them at once, just get them closer like this, and auto merge will do its thing. Now this is one way of merging two objects. There is obviously another way to do it, and it is much more simpler, but for that you will need to delete these faces. So delete that face, and let's select that face X, and we are going to delete this face. Now go to the edge mode, and we are going to hold down Alt key and left mouse button to select this whole edge loop. And then if we hold down Alt and select this one, you'll see that this got deselected. Okay, so to keep multiple selections, you need to not only hold down Alt key but also Shift key. And if I left mouse button on that edge, you'll see that we have now selected both of the edge loop. Whenever you are in the edge mode, you can go to the edge properties. Whenever you are in the face mode, you can go to the face properties. Now these are all the things that you can do with your mesh. Whenever you are in the vertex mode, you can go to the vertex properties. Now these are all the things that you can do with a single vertex. So if you want to experiment, you can totally experiment with it, but what we need right now is to merge these two together. So I'm gonna select both of them again, and then let's go to the edge mode again, and I'm gonna select bridge edge loops. So whenever I bridge edge loop, it will fill both of them, and there is one criteria for it, that both of them should have equal number of vertexes. So the vertex count should be same for both of them. Even if it is not, it will still try to like create a bridge between them, but the results might be a little bit weird. Now there is a shortcut to go in between these three modes. So vertex mode, edge mode, and face properties mode. Okay, I'm in a vertex mode right now, and I want to bridge edge loop. Okay, so I will press Control E to be inside the edge properties. So these are all the things that I can do with an edge. So I can now go ahead and do bridge edge loop. So just to recap what we just did, this might be getting a little bit confusing, but it's fine. If you don't remember the shortcuts right away, try doing it a little bit more and more. So eventually you will get it in your muscle memory to have all of these shortcuts in your fingertips. Till then, you can either use these panels over here if you don't remember it. So I think as a basic tips and tricks video, basically, this is good enough for a basic tutorial for modeling. We definitely haven't created anything. but I have told you what Blender is capable of. So these are the only tools that you will need as a beginner to model anything inside Blender. So just to show you that, let's create a low poly table. So Shift A, I'm gonna add a cylinder. Now I'm gonna open this properties panel, and then I'm gonna make this a really low poly. So let us say 8 vertices. And now I'm going to scale it down like this, and let's move it up a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Yeah, this looks good. So now I'm going to go ahead and again Shift A, add another cylinder. Now these are going to be its legs. And 8 vertices sounds good, but I'm also going to scale it down a little bit more. So I'm just gonna go with 6, and let's scale it down like this. Okay, so we already talked about that shortcut. Let's move it above like that. Okay, Control A, apply the scale again, and in the edit mode I will go ahead and select that face, and I will move it up until I like it. So I think this is good enough length for it. Now I will right click and set origin to geometry. Control A, apply the scale again. So I want the legs to be on 4 corners. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab this mesh till this corner over here, or let's just grab it till over there. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and select this object, apply a mirror modifier, and I'm going to select X, Y, so both the axis, and for the mirror object, I'm going to select this top part. So now I have my legs, but now let's make it a little bit more fancy. So let's select our legs, go into the edit mode. Now we can't really see the face inside it. So for that, I'm going to go ahead, hold down Z, go into the wireframe mode, select the top face, and then we are going to move it inside a little bit like this. Okay, now this has taken a little bit a really nice shape to it. Also, I want my bottom legs to be a little bit narrow, so I'm going to go into the edit mode again, and I can like rotate to the bottom, select the bottom face, and then we can scale it down like this. Okay, let's get out of the edit mode. And as you can see, my origin is still over there. It doesn't matter. I can right click and then set my origin to geometry again. You don't have to do that. But now our table is looking a little bit more low poly and stylized. We can also go ahead in the edit mode, add a loop cut by Control R. And also I can press E so that it takes like the shape that I want. I can again disable by pressing E. I think I like it this way. Okay, so now I'm just going to grab that edge inwards like this. So now we are also giving it some interesting shape. Now I can again go ahead and rotate it from my view like this by pressing R. I can rotate it and give it a really nice shape from all the sides. Okay, so this looks really good. Also, I think I want to bevel it a little bit, so I'm going to select the whole edge, hit Control B, and then bevel it something like this. And then I can open the panel and then increase a segment to just one segment, and I can adjust the width like this. You can even adjust the shape if you want. So this looks little bit good, but I'm not actually happy with how this is way too big. So I'm just going to hold down scale Shift Z, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. Let's apply the scale in the edit mode. I'm going to go ahead and select the top panel, and then I'm going to move it up a little bit more like this, so make it a little bit thicker. Apply the scale again. As I said, it is just my habit to do that. I'm going to now add bevel on top and bottom faces. So I'm just going to select both of them, hit Control B, and then drag my mouse out like this. And I think this amount of bevel is good. I can now again go ahead and adjust the width a little bit more to my liking. How does it look without that? It looks decent. Okay. I will just decrease it a little bit like that. Okay. So I'm happy with this. I'm gonna get out of the edit mode. And this is, so basically this is the sum of all the things that we did in this video, apart from adding like those bridge edge loop. So let's do one thing. Let's add a hole at the center of this thing. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the face mode, select the top face, select the bottom face. Now we haven't talked about this yet, but you can inset a face by pressing I. So if I press I, this will inset a face like this. And it is also happening at the bottom, by the way. So if I press I, you can see I can inset a face like that. And I think hole should be something over there, and you get this properties now over here. You can play around with this properties if you want. So now as we are in a face mode, we need to do bridge edge loops. Now after selecting these two faces, if I press Ctrl E, I can do a bridge edge loops. Now if I do that, you'll see that those two faces, they got joined. But if I don't do that, and if I just delete these faces, then I will probably have to do that manually. So a way to do it manually is I will just go into the edge mode, select the bottom loop. Okay, I have selected the bottom loop. I will now press E to extrude, and then I will press Z to clamp myself on the Z axis like this. Okay, now I can go ahead and drop it down like that. And I think it just got merged. Yeah, it got merged. Okay, or else you can do is you can again select this word, merge at last, and you can do that manually like that. But I think bridge edge loop is much more quicker. So Control E, bridge edge loops, and yeah, you are done. You just created a hole. Let me just tell you about inset, because we just did it. So if you select any face and press I, you can insert that face. If you press I again, nothing happens. But if you select two faces and press I, you can insert those faces. If you press I again, you can insert individual faces. If you press I again, you can now insert those two faces. So like that, you can select multiple faces like this. And if I press I now, you can see I have inserted those faces. If I press I again, you can insert those individual faces like this. You can also go ahead and press Ctrl R and you can add a loop cut, and then go ahead and Ctrl B to add a bevel like this to add more geometry in your thing. And then you can like give it a little bit of a design, something like that. I can also move it a little bit up like this, and let's move it up a little bit like this. So now your table looks a little bit more like a sitting stool now. So yeah, this is how to manipulate mesh in Blender, and these are some operations that you will get familiar with as you keep on modeling. So there are also a lot of helpful modifiers in the generate tab, in the deform tab, and in the edit you will probably not use this much, but generate and deform, these modifiers are used a lot while 3D modeling in Blender. And we talked about some basic shortcuts and some tips and tricks that I personally use in Blender a lot. This will also help you in speeding up your modeling workflow. Now, in future, after this series is completed, as I said, we are going to create assets. And at that time, we will also talk more about some more tips and tricks. So to stay tuned for that, subscribe to the channel, and if you learned something from this video, hit like to show your support. If you have any doubts, comment section is open for you all, or you can join my Discord server. If you want to support me more, you can do it on Ko-fi. Link will be in the description below. If you forget anything, just go back and watch it again. Try it out yourself. Hope this video helped, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Hey everyone, this is Mr. Isometric, and welcome to another part of beginner friendly tutorial series for Blender. Now in today's video, we are going to talk about shader editor, and to use the shader editor, we are going to use some add-ons. Now which add-ons, I have talked about them in my prerequisite video. So if you haven't watched that video, do check it out. I have mentioned all the add-ons to turn on, and do like this video and subscribe to my channel to show your support. So the Blender file for this project will be available on my Ko-fi channel, so do check check it out. Link will be in the description below. If you have any doubts, mention them in the comment section below, or you can join my Discord server. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so now let's talk about shader editor, and the first thing you should do is open it. To open the shader editor, the fastest way is to go in the shading tab on the top, and the slowest way is to split this window by right clicking, add a vertical split or horizontal split, whatever you like it, and then go on the top over there and then change this to shader editor. Press N, and this is your shader editor over here. So you can do all of that thing, or you can just go ahead on the top in the shading tab and your shader editor is over here. Now as you can see, by default we are inside the material preview mode. Now if you are going to go ahead and use EV or cycles to render your things, I will highly recommend you guys to use rendered mode. So to go there, you can either click on the top right over here and then go inside the rendered mode, or you can just hold down your Z key and then in this pie menu you can select rendered mode. So now we are inside the rendered mode, and below is our shader editor. You can totally ignore this section and this section, so you can make them smaller. Let's go ahead and change our method to object mode. Now in the object mode you can apply material to your object, and in the world mode we can assign environment texture to our world, or you can even just go ahead and increase the strength so that you get this world lighting, or you can also change the color of your world. It is better to just have an HDRI texture, just like in our material preview mode. As you can see, we have this HDRI enabled. Now you can click on that arrow and then change those HDRIs over here, but I want them in my rendered view. You can get this textures, this environment textures, they are called HDRIs, from a website known as Polyhaven. Now there are ton of free HDRIs available over there, and I have my own personal library of it. So as I said, we are going to use nodes. So when you are in your world mode, hit Control and T, and when you do that, automatically these nodes will appear, and this is because of Node Wrangler add-on that we talked about in my prerequisite video. Here we have environment texture, so just click on open, and now you need to navigate where your HDRIs are. So my HDRIs are in my Blender folder over here. So these are all the HDRIs that I downloaded from Polyhaven, and I think I will add this artist workshop HDRI in my scene. Now as you can see, our scene is lit. Now let's go back to our object mode. Now nodes in EV and cycles, they are different, and I think mostly people are going to use cycles. So let's just switch to cycles render engine, and over here I'm going to switch to GPU because my GPU is much more faster than my CPU, and I don't think we need 1000 samples, so I'm just going to tone it down to 200 samples. Now let's go ahead to apply a material to any object. Select the object and click on this new tab, and then you can go ahead and rename your material. So I'm just going to rename it to tabletop, and we have this automatically. Blender has given us a material output node and a principal BSDF node. So for this basic tutorial, I'm not going to go ahead and talk about all of these sockets, but just few sockets that will be very important to create your own material. Now let's go ahead and check one more thing. So in the material properties, you will see that we have the same arrangement as the shader editor. So you don't have to always open shader editor. You can always just go into the material properties, select the object, and then go over here and then assign a new material. You can either click on the plus button over here, or there is also a convenient plus button over here, and we have the same values as we see over there. So as you can see, when I open and close, the same thing is opening and closing over there. But I would highly recommend to not use this panel to manipulate your materials. Always come over here because this looks much more user friendly than doing stuff over here. Just for your knowledge, I just told you guys that same things are over here as well. So we are just going to go back to our rendered settings. So for the basic material editing, we are going to change the color of this table, and to change the color we have a base color socket. Now principal BSDF is something that can create all the materials on its own, but these materials, they are separate by themselves as well. So as you can see, we just changed the color of this table. Now you can also go ahead and press Shift A, and these are all the nodes that you can add as a shader. So all these BSDFs, they are separate branch of their own. So diffuse BSDF has the base color and roughness and normal to it. So the base color, roughness and normal, this socket is available on this one node. So you don't always have to use principal BSDF, but having principal BSDFs also saves you a ton of node management. Now all of these things, they are called nodes, and you can either call this thing as noodles, or you can call it as wires connecting them. As you can see that we have our table, and it is an orange table. So let's go ahead and make it a little bit more reddish, something like that. I'm also going to go ahead and make it a little bit more darker so that it looks like a wood. This actually looks really good, but now let me just make my wood a little bit more rough. So I'm just going to increase the roughness slider like that. And for wood, it looks a little bit too specular. Now I can go into the specular tab and IOR level. I don't know why are they calling it IOR level, but okay, I can just decrease this level to reduce the specular effect. Now what is roughness and what is specular? Like, what are these all sliders? If I have to tell it in short, then metallic slider is self-explanatory. If your thing is metallic, just make it 1. If it is not, just make it 0. Roughness is how rough your surface is. So if the light is hitting your object, then it will scatter around, and the more it will scatter around, the more colors you are going to see, but also it will not look shiny, so your surface will look rough. And the specularity is how much rays of light it is going to send in one direction so that it looks shiny. Now if I reduce my roughness like this, and now if I reduce my specularity to 0, you'll see that I have no lighting information. So basically specularity is how much light is going to be. Even if your surface is rough, it is still going to reflect some light in one direction. So basically, so yeah, specularity is the thing for that. So if I make my specularity 1, you are going to see those reflections over here, and the more I make it rough, the more direction that light is going to go ahead. So right now, even when my roughness is 1, it is still reflecting the light, but it is reflecting it in all directions, so we cannot see the shininess of the material. If I go down, we can see our material is a little bit smooth, like the surface is smooth. This sliders, basically this roughness, IOR, metallic, these are all defining the surface of your object. So right now our surface is a little bit rough. It is very specular. I can decrease that specularity so it is not reflecting that much amount of light in one direction. Anisotropy. Now anisotropy is something that metallic surfaces has. So for that, we have to reduce our saturation so that we can visualize it a little bit better. I'm also going to make my material a little bit more brighter. I'm going to increase my metallicness, and then we are going to decrease the, let us say we have to increase our roughness a little bit more like that. Now, as you can see, our reflection, it is straightforward, but when I increase my anisotropy, you'll see that my reflection suddenly is kind of circular, or you can also make it linear by using this anisotropic rotation. So this is something that you usually see on bolts, on cylindric metallic cylinders that are just being post-processed by some kind of machining process. So I will just make it 0 so that I don't get that. And let's make metallic 0. Let's increase the roughness. Let's get our reddish brown color back so that it looks like a wood. Let's make it darker. So there you go. Yeah, this looks really good for a low poly shading. Now there are some more things over here which we will talk about in future in our advanced course, or you can just watch another video tutorial where they explain what principal BSDF is, or what are all these sliders in principal BSDF. So yeah, now what we can do is we can duplicate this material by clicking over here so that we can apply it to the legs, or we can create a new material over here by clicking on the plus icon, and let's call it table legs. It is a good habit to rename your materials, by the way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my node and I'm going to press X to delete it. Now let's select our table. Let's select our node, press Ctrl C to copy it, or you can just right click and then copy thing like this. Let's go to our legs and press Ctrl V to paste it, and let's plug it over here. I don't want to use the same material. I want to change its color a little bit. That's why I did it. Or else you can just use same materials on two different objects. So tabletop, this material can also be applied over here. So tabletop, there you go. Now to access different materials, you can always click on this drop down, and there is a number on the left hand side of this material. So table legs, no object is using that material. That's why there is a 0 on the left hand side. And usually whenever you restart Blender, that material is gonna get erased. And to stop that, you can always go ahead, select that material like this and click on this shield icon. So this shield icon is called fake user. As I said, if no object is using that material is going to get erased. By clicking on the shield icon, you're telling Blender that I know that there is no object using this, but just keep it. You're assigning a fake object to that material. Anytime you see this shield icon, it is for that purpose only. I don't want to use the same material, so I used table legs, and I'm going to just make it a little bit more darker like this, so that we get a little bit of variation in that table. And this is pretty good for the beginner shading tutorial. So this is how you apply materials to the object, and you can change the material surface properties. So the first thing I will say is definitely play around with Principal BSDF, or if you want, you can go ahead and watch some tutorials on Principal BSDF itself. And that's being said, if you still have any doubts from this video, comment section is free for you all, or you can join the Discord server. Now this is something worthy of putting in a project. So this project file will be available on my Ko-fi for free, so do check it out. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to support me. And if you want to support extra, if you like Blender content, you can support me on Ko-fi. And yeah, hope you all learned something new and hope this video helped. I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Hey everyone, this is Mr. Isometric and welcome back to another part of Blender beginner tutorial series. So in today's video, we are going to learn about UV unwrapping, and we are going to talk about some features and tools that Blender provides you so that your UV unwrapping becomes faster and more efficient. Though there are some good useful add-ons that you can turn on, which we talked about in prerequisite video. So if you haven't watched that video, do check that video out. UV unwrapping is an organic skill, and the more models you unwrap, the more knowledge you are going to gain on how to do UV unwrapping in a proper way. And also UV unwrapping and texturing goes hand in hand. So you cannot just learn UV unwrapping and then start learning texturing. What I will advise is, once you're done UV unwrapping, go ahead and texture that model, and you will face some challenges and some difficulties while texturing it. And at that moment, you will learn that if you have unwrapped your model in this certain way, then texturing would have been much more convenient. So all this sense of how to unwrap your model, you will gain it by doing the unwrapping more and more. This video or any unwrapping video will only teach you some logical sense that you can use while unwrapping, and some tips and tricks that they have to get your results faster and to make your unwrapping more efficient. So the more tutorials you watch will not make you a professional UV unwrapper. It is totally dependent on you and how much you have done it. So that's being said, if you have any doubts, mention them in a comment section below or join my Discord server. Project files will be available on my Ko-fi, and please like this video and subscribe to my channel to support me. And yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So what is UV unwrapping? So UV unwrapping is basically taking our 3D mesh and converting it into a 2D flat surface, and that's basically what UV unwrapping is. Now UV unwrapping is done into UV editor. Now there are two ways to open UV editor. You can either go on the top over here, click on UV editing, and this is your UV editor, and this is your mesh editing window. You will need both of them. Now if if you go into the layout mode, you can go ahead and click on this line at the bottom, select vertical split, and you can split your window like this. Now on the top left corner, you will see that we have UV editor. Click on that, and this is your UV editing window. So both of them are pretty much similar. Whatever you like doing, you can do that. Now for the sake of learning, we are not going to unwrap this table that we made in our previous lecture. We are just going to hide it. Let's create a new collection, and let's go ahead and add a cube in our scene. So shift A, and we are going to add a cube. If we go into the edit mode, you will see that this cube is already UV unwrapped. All these faces, if I select the top face, you'll see that that face is being shown over there. If we select that face is being shown over there. So you will need to select everything in your 3D mesh to be shown it over here. Now, if you are in the object mode, you will not see the UV unwrap. So UV unwrap is only visible in the edit mode, and you will need to select the faces that you want to see. There is one option that will allow you to see your UV unwrap even without selecting your mesh. If you click on this arrows over here, UV sync selection, you can now select your UVs, and you can do vice versa. You can select your face, and you will know which UV island it is referring to. Now what is a UV island? So if you select one face, and if you press L, it will select the whole island. So whatever chunk of unwrap that is attached to each other, it is known as an island. So this is one whole island. Okay, so let's start by unwrapping a face at a time. So I'm going to select this top face over here, and then I'm going to press U to unwrap. This option menu will open. Now this is your unwrapping menu. I think this is also available if you go into the UVs tab over here. You'll see that the same panel is available. So shortcut is U, and when you press U, this panel opens near your pointer. So now if I click on unwrap, you'll see that that face that I have selected is now unwrapped over here on the UV editor. Now this UV editor goes from 0 to 1 till over there in the X direction, and 0 to 1 in the Y direction. Now this is how you unwrap a single face if you have selected it. Now if I select two faces at once, and if I hit U and unwrap, you'll see that those two faces that I have selected are now unwrapped together. And if I now select any of the vertex, and if I press grab, you'll see that those two faces, they are connected. Now while editing the mesh, we have three options, which is vertex, edge, and face. We have those options here as well. Now I think this fourth option is UV select mode. Now if I click on it, you'll see that we can select the whole island with it. And if I now grab it, you'll see that it is grabbing the whole island. If I press T, then you can see the toolbar over here. Now this toolbar is similar for what we get in our 3D window over here as well. So you can perform the same operations over here, like moving your island. You can rotate your island, you can scale it up and down like this, and then you have all-in-one gizmo that I never personally used. Yeah, this is the way you can handle your UVs in UV editor. Now I will just press T to hide that toolbar panel. Now if I select everything, you'll see that we have two islands over here, and if I select this one, it has selected the first island. Don't forget that I'm in UV island selection mode, and if I click on this, it has selected that island. So now what happens when I just select everything and press U and then press unwrap, you'll see that it has unwrapped all the individual faces, but it also have given me a warning. And this warning is because we haven't applied any seams. For unwrapping, you need to add seams in your mesh. So without complicating any more things, I just wanted to let you guys know that if you select any faces and then hit U and unwrap, in this way you can unwrap things without adding seams. So there is possibility of doing that. So let's talk about seams now. So seams in Blender defines where you want to cut your geometry. So for that, we will go into the edge mode, and then we are going to select this top part, and then I'm going to hit Control E to go into the edge properties, and we are going to mark it as a seam. So seams are marked with the red color, so your edge will now glow red. This is where we are going to cut our geometry. So now if I select everything and hit U and hit unwrap, you'll notice something, that our UV unwrap is now divided into two islands. So our first island is this part and our second island is this part. Now I will just turn on sync selection and let's select this face. So as you can see, this face got isolated because we are cutting it throughout basically, and this is now its own separate island. And as we can see, all of this thing, this has now gotten separated from it. Hopefully now you'll know how seam works and how adding them into your mesh will affect its unwrapping decision. So now let's go back into the edge mode and let me just dissolve this seam. Now how to remove a seam? So just press Ctrl E and then clear that seam over there. Okay, so now we are going to cut this face like this, and then we will also go ahead and add a seam over here. So let's mark it as a seam. So now these two faces, they are going to be separated, and let's go ahead and let's separate this face as well completely. So we are going to add a seam like this. Okay, now Control E and then mark it as a seam. So as we can see, because of that seam, now this face is going to get separated, but these two faces, they are now going to stay connected via this edge over here because we haven't added a seam over there. So select that, and select that. So these faces, they are now going to get separated when we unwrap it, and they will become one island. And whatever we haven't selected yet, so this face, and this face, they will become their own separate island. So now if I select everything, hit U and then hit unwrap, you'll see that we got two different islands. So let me go back into the island selection mode over here. Let's select everything over there. And this is our first island and this is our second island. So now let's see the corresponding faces. So if I select that face, now you'll see that it is that face over there. If I now hold down shift and select this face, it is that face over there. And if I hold down shift and select that face, you'll see that it is that face over there. So in that way, you can also click, hold and drag and select another island, and it has correspondingly selected us corresponding UV faces over there. This is how you basically unwrap anything in Blender by adding seams. Now there are also other ways of unwrapping, so I'm just going to remove all the seams. So let's clear the seam. Now suppose if you want to unwrap anything from a point of view, so you can just select everything or select the faces that you want to unwrap in that direction, and if you hit U and then you have something known as project from view. Now if you do that, you'll see that our cube is now almost looks like it is in the wireframe mode. You can see that it has unwrapped it exactly as we see in the viewport. So now if I go to the top view like this, select everything and hit U and do project from views, you'll see that now it has unwrapped all the faces. By the way, they are hidden over here. As you can see, there is definitely a face over there, but it has unwrapped itself to become an edge. So it has unwrapped itself to be very thin. So that's how project from view works. So now let's talk about other unwrapping method. Now cube project is something that I always use. So if you have a tileable texture, something like a wall, or if you have a floor. Now usually floor are not 3D objects, they are a 2D plane, and for that you can just hit unwrap and then you can scale it, something like this. But for something like a wall, suppose this was a wall like this, and I want to texture it to a wall texture, and it is a tileable texture. So for tileable textures, you can always scale your UV unwrap like this to increase the tiling. We will learn more about it in future. So for something like this, usually what I prefer is just hit U and do a cube project. Now what cube project does is it goes to your side view, it does a project from you, it goes to the top view, it does project from view, it goes to the right hand side view, and then it does project from view, and it creates a UV unwrap such that your texture scale, your texture density is same throughout all sides. Now what does that mean? And we will learn that in a bit. So if I select everything and if I scale, it will keep the same texture density on all the faces. So cube project is also very useful in tileable while you're texturing something that has tileable texture. So let's press U again, and you have two another options, which is cylindrical project and spherical project. Now if cube project doesn't work in your case, you can try this too, or you can go ahead and do a smart UV project. So the way it works is you just select everything, hit U, hit smart UV project, keep the angle at 66. Margin method is scaled. Now you don't need to worry about any of these things yet. And when you hit unwrap, you will see that it has now given us some unwrapping over here, and all the faces are being separated over here. It is because of the angle that we have selected. So I think for this example, it is better if we use something else. So let me just add a cube again. And this time we are going to change the shape of it a little bit. So I'm just going to add a bevel over here. Now let's select everything like this. Let's select everything over here, and let's go ahead and add a bevel over here as well, but this time I'm going to add a segment. Okay, now I'm going to hit U and do a smart UV project. And if I now lower the angle, you'll see that our geometry is changing a little bit. And the less your angle is, the more slices your geometry is going to go through. So 66 is a really good number that Blender is defaulted to. Now, what is island margin? So if you increase the island margin, you'll see that there is a distance between each and individual islands, and this is the distance between each individual island. This is important to have in your UV unwrap, or else your textures might bleed into another island and it might gives you some weird results. Area weight, now I don't know what area weight is, so I'm just going to keep it at 0. Margin method and island margin, they both go in hand. Rotation method, now how your islands are rotated, now this usually hardly matters, but you can play around with it and you can get whatever your desired results are. If you increase this number, less islands you're gonna get, and if you do scale to bounds, then it will try to scale your UV islands so that they fit inside this square box over here. And even if I scale it down, it is still trying to do that. So this is how smart UV project works. Okay, so now video is far from over, but what I will suggest you guys is to add primitive meshes and try UV unwrapping them by yourself. In that way, you will get more familiar with this process. And once you do that, we can now go ahead and talk about our next topic, which is texture density. To demonstrate texture density, I will first have to prepare the scene. So let me just add a cube in our scene. Let's change this window to shader editor, and we will give this cube a new material. Let's call it UV checker. Now let's hold down Control T, and it will add a new image texture. Now, while creating a new image, you can either create a colored image, you can create a UV grid or a color grid. If you select a blank, it will take whatever color you have over here, but we are not going to create a blank image. We are going to create a UV grid for now, and then we will create a color grid later. So let's call it UV gray. Also do note that we have 1K resolution over here. Now this is also very important to know before you create any image. You can change this number, you can multiply it by 2 or divide it by 2 to create your desired resolution, or you can just directly plug your number over here like this. Okay, so now let's create a new image. Now as you can see, once you added that, yours might not look like this because I was already in the textured mode over here. Yours might be in the object mode. Just change it to texture to see your texture over here, or you can just go to the material preview or rendered mode to see the texture on your object. Now I prefer having texture mode enabled like this because it just saves some performance. Now let's go back to our UV editing mode, and over here if we go into the edit mode, you'll see that once I select one of the face, suppose if I select this face, you'll see that it is corresponding to that texture itself. So on the top, okay, so over here we see a cyan plus, which is over here. Now this is obviously rotated 180 degrees, and it is because the way it is being unwrapped right now. So if you have noticed, the squares on each faces, they are at equal quantity, you can say. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, so 8 squares are on the all faces. Now this is what I mean by texture density. So now if I select everything over here as well, and then if I scale it, you'll see that the density of the texture is getting increased on each individual face. So if your texture is tileable, as you can see, this texture is tileable, it is tiling itself up on this object over here, and the resolution of this whole image is 1K, and that 1K detail is now being applied over, like, say, this cubic area, and the more I increase it, the more dense the texture is going to get on this object. So this is how you can visualize texture density on any UV island. So let me just go ahead and make it, let's do a pack island. Let's just hit pack. Okay, now what happens when you have another cube in a scene? So now let's select both of them, and let me just do pack island again. For this time I'm just going to use a little bit of margin, suppose say 0.002, and now it has packed both of our UV islands, and you can see both of them have equal amount of texture density. Now in most cases what will happen is, suppose you will have another cube, so let's say, and it is a little bit bigger than this cube. Now the texture density over here is in mismatch because this cube is smaller, and if we try to place this cube over here, you'll see that there is a massive difference between the density over there and here. Now to correct this issue, what you can do is you can select everything. Now as you can see, both of them are unwrapped. Now all you need to do is just select both of those UV islands and do an average island scale. Now when you do that, it will scale both of the islands appropriately such that the density on both of them is equal. The density corresponding to this cube versus this cube, you can see the squares over here, they are bigger, and over here they are smaller, but that's actually incorrect. The squares on both of them are of the same unit. If I just bring it closer over here, you'll see that the squares over here are equal to the squares over here. So the length of this square is same as this square. As we know that both of them are cubes, what happens when one of them is not? So let's just make this a weird shape like this. And as you can see, when we scale it, the UV unwrap just got squished. Now I'm just going to go ahead and select both of them, and we need to, in this case, we need to unwrap it again. So I'm just going to hit unwrap again, and you'll see that we got the unwrap like that, and still it didn't change the weird scaling issue over here. So what to do in that case? So we are just going to select everything, hit U to unwrap, and we are going to do a smart UV project because I don't want to go ahead and add seams right now. So if I do that, and if I do smart UV project, you'll see that now all the faces, now they have equal amount of texture density for both of them. And still, just to be safe, I'm just going to go ahead and do an average island scale, and then we are going to go ahead and pack island. Now while doing this, while packing islands, if you have done average island scale before, just uncheck the scale option, and then we are just going to pack it. Okay, now there is a little bit of margin, and as you can see, our islands, they have gone outside our bounding box. Now to prevent that, let's go ahead and do pack island again, and this time I'm going to go ahead and check the scale option, and let's make our margin something very small, and let's hit pack. So now it has appropriately scaled the islands in the proportion, and now all the faces have same texture density. Now this is very important while you are going to export this, suppose in Substance Painter, and then you are going to texture it. Now this is the best UV unwrap that you can have for this model. If you want to decrease the margin, you can totally do that, but yeah, this is like the fastest and most efficient way of unwrapping anything in Blender. Let me just go ahead and delete this cube over here, and as I said earlier, if we had a wall, we have a tileable texture. I'm not going to waste my time adding seams. I'm just going to hit U cube project, and once you do cube project, it will unwrap your mesh such that it continues with a flow. So as you can see, the squares, first of all, the density is really good, but not only that, our mesh is unwrapped in such a way that it is following itself on the texture, on the map itself, on the UV map itself. this face and this face, they are a little bit different, but apart from that, this whole surrounding faces, they are equal to each other. And from that, what I mean is, now you can just go ahead, select all the island, everything at once, and if you scale it now, you'll see that the density remains the same, and this makes it much more easier to apply tileable textures on walls and stuff like that. So the scale over here doesn't really matter. You can scale this UV island as much as you want. Even if it goes outside this one boundary, it is still going to give you better result, and you might see most of the people doing that. Now you can do the same thing with the smart UV project, and this is also a good this is also a better way. But as you can see, our texture, it is a little bit stretched, and this is basically following the ratio between two edges, so this edge and this edge. So if I now scale it like this, you'll see that it is going to maintain that rectangular ratio over there. If you want, you can just go ahead and scale it on the Y like this to make it as much as square you want, or you can just go ahead and do a cube projection. So in that way, you get squares on all the faces no matter what. Okay, so I think this is good enough information with this grayscale image. So now let's move on, and let's go back to our shader editor. Let's remove this image by pressing X, and then let's create a new image. Now let's call it color UV, and again I'm going to keep my resolution to 1K, and then we are going to go ahead and select the color grid, and we are going to click on new image. So now as you can see, we got a little bit different texture than before. Now this is much more easier to debug than the grayscale one. So we know that our texture, it starts from the red and it ends at this pinkish magenta, and also the hue goes from bright to darker. So it is easier when you are using something like this color grid to know the orientation of your unwrap. So let me just go ahead and do a smart UV project again. And as we can see, this is now laid horizontally. This is also horizontal, and this is upside down, and I know that because it is near the C8. And if I select and scale it up like this, you'll see that it is upside down. Now sometimes the orientation matters a lot and sometimes it doesn't. Now to get more information, you can either increase the resolution of this image, make it 4K or something, and the density of this tiles like this H1, it will become almost as small as that over there, and your result will look something like this. So now you know how to apply this color grid as well. And now I can again go ahead and do average island scale, and then do pack island, and let's pack it again. Basically this is how you debug your UV unwrap, and this is how you unwrap inside Blender. Now as a beginner, this is good enough information for you guys. So after this, you can go ahead and watch some more tutorials, and you can either try unwrapping it by yourself. So do follow this video after you're done watching it, and if you still have any more doubts, you can ask them in a comment section below, or you can join my Discord server. Project file for this will be available on my Ko-fi, so link will be in the description below. If you found this video useful and if you learned something new, do like this video, and to support me, subscribe, or to support me a little bit extra, you can do that on Ko-fi. I'll see you in the next video tutorial, and until then, keep on learning, keep on experimenting, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Hey everyone, this is Mr. Isometric, and welcome back to another part of Blender beginner tutorial series. So in today's video, we are going to texture this table that we made in previous videos, and I'm saying texture and not texture paint because there is a little bit difference between them. Texture painting will be its own separate video, and guys, making this video takes a lot of time. I do really need your guys' support, so please subscribe and like this video and watch till the end. Share it if you can, and that's being said, let's get started. So as you can see on the screen, I got these two image textures. First is plywood and second is wooden table one 4K. I got these textures from Polyhaven. You can get them from any other websites if you want. Let's begin our texturing process. So in previous videos, we already made two materials. So the first material was the tabletop and the second material was table leg. And the reason why we did that was because I wanted some darker shade to this one and some lighter shade to this one. So that's exactly what we are going to do today as well. So I think I'm going to apply plywood texture to the top one and the wooden texture to the bottom one. So let's just select tabletop like this, and in the shader editor we have on the tabletop section, select the plywood, and the first thing is the color information. Now the color information is to by diffuse, or you can say base color. Now this texture can be called anything, but if you open it up, it should contain all the color information like this. I'm just going to drag and drop it inside over there, and let's plug the color channel into the base color. And as you can see, we got our texture over there, but it looks a little bit weird. It has this weird swaying pattern to it. Now this is where UV unwrapping gets into the display. Now if we go ahead and first make sure that we only have one UV map over here, and I'm going to go ahead and change this to UV editor. Let's remove that. We can select and open our plywood diffuse 4K like this. Now let's go ahead and press tab to go into the edit mode, and you can see that this is the UV unwrap that we have. We can either go ahead and, as we talked in our previous video which contained all the information about UV unwrapping, I can either do a smart UV project like this. Let me just go ahead and disable the overlays for now. Okay, it looks good. Some part looks a little bit weird, like this part, it looks a little bit weird, just a little bit weird, not that weird. Okay, so we can do another thing. We can just select everything, hit U to unwrap, and we can do a cube projection. Now doing a cube projection will make it so that the texture is evenly spread out on every like view angle. And as you can see now, this looks a little bit much more better than previous one. So I'm just going to go ahead and cube project this. So I'm going to keep it like this now, and this is our color information. So I'm just going to make this window a little bit smaller. We don't need it anymore. I'm going to turn on the overlays, and let's get out of the edit mode. Now the next texture is let's check what do we have now. We have ambient occlusion. Now ambient occlusion is the corner shadows. In this case, I think it will add shadows near these grains. So let me show you how to add ambient occlusion map. Okay, so just drag and drop ambient occlusion like this. Let's put it on top of diffuse. Let's move them a little bit behind. Okay, now I'm going to add Shift A, and let's add a mix color node, which is this one. Let's put that into B, let's put that into A, and with the result of this we are going to put it inside the base color. And as we can see that it has this shadow information. Now we are going to change this from mix to multiply, and I'm just going to increase the factor to 1, and there is a little bit difference between them, and I think we can check the result by just switching it to this. Okay, so as you can see, without ambient occlusion texture it looks like that, and with ambient occlusion texture it looks a little bit like that. Okay, so it just got a little bit of in-grain shadows over there. So this is how you can use your ambient occlusion texture. Now the next texture is I think we should play with the roughness next. So I'm just going to drag and drop the roughness over here, and let's just go ahead and drag this roughness channel into the roughness socket. Okay, there you go. So we just put our color inside the roughness, and roughness will look weird. So apart from color information, everything in Blender should be non-color data. So we are just going to switch our color space to non-color like this, and we are going to make it preview like that. So the way I switched directly like that was by holding down Shift, Control, and then left mouse button. So that way you just preview that node. So Shift, Control, and left mouse button on any node, and you can preview that. And this is because of the add-on Node Wrangler. So if you haven't turned that on, do turn that on. So now that we have added roughness to our material, we can see that it is not rough on all over the surface. It is only rough near the grains where it should be. So something like that. And yeah, we can go ahead into the specularity, and we can increase or decrease it. So I think specularity also gets its own texture. So let me check if we have that, and I think this is a combined texture, I guess. Let me just check this texture out. real quick. So if you ever see something like this, the colorful texture, something that is yellow, red and green, like high contrast yellow or something, or high contrast green, unless it is a grass texture. But if you see something like this, it is basically a mask map or something like a combined texture. So you can combine the roughness, ambient occlusion, metallic, all of this in just one texture. And I think this is something like that. So I'm just going to click, drag and just search for separate color. Okay, so the red channel is something, the green channel is something different, and the blue channel is basically empty. So I think this texture, usually this kind of textures are used in game engines, but I don't think we will be needing them. So I'm just going to talk about the next texture, which is a normal map. Now Blender uses OpenGL normal map format. Now what is OpenGL? So these are the image somewhere on the screen that shows the difference between OpenGL and DirectX normal map. The difference between them is that their red channel is just inverted. Now you don't need to be worried about that as a beginner, but if you one day like get a DirectX normal map, something like this, and now if I add a normal map like that, okay, now you cannot just directly plug your normal map inside the normal socket like that. It should go through a normal map node, and when you do that, you'll get all the fake shadows. Now this is a free detail texture basically, and also you need to switch it to non-color data as well. And as you can see, without this it looks a flat surface, and when I add this to the normal channel, you'll see that we got a little bit of shadowy bump, something like that. And if I just increase the strength over here, you can see that my surface, it looks a little bit more grainy. And if I decrease this, you'll see that my surface just starts going flat. The thing is, this map is inverted because, as I said, this is a DirectX map. And in that case, what you need to do is just drag and drop separate color. And after that, we are going to add a combine color. Okay. And we are going to plug that into over there. Now, as I said, the difference between OpenGL and DirectX is that its green channel, it's inverted. So I'm just going to take the green channel and then I'm going to invert it. Okay, so I have added the invert color node and I'm just going to plug that into the color socket, and then let's plug that over there. So right now we have inverted the green channel and now it looks much more better, and it is behaving correctly. So my this small details, they are going inside the wood, and the surface, it is staying out. Now, how to tell difference between if you have a DirectX normal map or OpenGL normal map? Well, in some cases you can't unless they just name their textures properly. But if you feel like the shadows are acting weird, then you can always go ahead and try inverting the normal map itself. Sometimes it's pretty obvious, so you won't even need to know if it is OpenGL or DirectX. If the normal map is acting weird, then yeah, definitely its green channel is inverted. So just invert that the way I showed you guys. So I'm just going to plug OpenGL version, in which I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to tone down the normal intensity like that. I think this is one is a good value for this material right now. Okay, so I think those were all the textures that were available for us. Now you can always go ahead and go into the edit mode, and then you can turn down the overlays like this. Let's make our UV editor bigger, select everything, and then let's scale it down. So this will make your wood texture a little bit bigger. So you can always go back to your UV editor and scale your texture up or down. So this looks pretty intense like this. I think I will scale it down just a little bit till over there. And I think this looks pretty good. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And now let's move on to texturing our legs. Now, there is one more important thing, which is you can always have same material on two different objects. So if I now change its material to something like tabletop, it will have the same materials as you can see, and I can again go ahead, select everything, and as we are using mirror modifier, we only have to texture one leg. You can apply the mirror modifier and then unwrap 4 of the legs differently if you want. So I'm just going to hit U to unwrap, and then I'm going to use cube projection. Let's disable the overlays, and this looks pretty good, though I don't like its rotation that much. So I'm just going to select everything and rotate everything by 90 degrees, and this looks pretty good. Yeah, I like this rotation, but this table kind of looks boring to me, so I'm just going to add a different texture for this part separately. So let's just go ahead and change it to table legs again, and now the same thing, we are going to go back and then we are going to go to table 1. Okay, take our diffuse again, let's plug that over there, let's plug it over there, take the ambient occlusion, put that over there. So let's mix over there, and let's take the result into the base color, change this to multiply, and let's increase the factor to 1. OpenGL normal map, so I'm just going to put that over there. Let's make it non-color data, and let's add a normal map. We need to put color into color, and we need to put normal into normal. Now let's go ahead and let's drag and drop our roughness. So roughness map over there, let's make it non-color. For the roughness color, we are going to put that into roughness channel like that. Is there any other texture that we can use? By the way, this is a displacement texture, and I think I totally forgot to do that in over here. So displacement texture is totally optional, but you can still use it. So in the plywood, let me just show you what displacement does. Displacement and height, those two are kind of similar. So you can either put displacement into displacement socket, or you can use it as a bump map. So let me just show you how to do that real quick. So the displacement texture, let's drag and drop it over here. I will just make some room like that. So this is our displacement texture. Let me just make it non-color. So there is a displacement socket over here, and for that you need to use displacement map. So now this will only work if you have high resolution mesh. This will displace the your mesh with the help of texture itself. So I'm just going to put color into the height channel. So let me just show you by zooming in. So this is our displacement texture, and over here, as you can see, this is how you connect it. So make sure that it is non-color data and the color channel is set to height. And we just saw that everything just went dark. You can tone down the scale a little bit like that, and it will actually try to manipulate your geometry. But as we don't have that much geometry, what you can do is, instead of using displacement node, you can plug this into bump map. So we can see that we have a bump node over there. You need to just drag and drop this bump node in front of the normal map like this, and when you do that, it will just automatically get connected normal to normal, and normal goes back into over there. But this time you can also add this into the height channel, and this has added now the fake bump on our material. So if I decrease this strength, I can control the bumpiness, and this makes your material a little bit more realistic in a sense. So you need to control this a lot. Also, if you want higher strength, you need to decrease the distance, or else it will look a little bit weird. So distance is like how intense it is. Even though strength says it, like strength also says that, how intense it is. But assume the strength something as how much it is visible, and distance as how intense it is going to be. So I'm keeping it pretty less intense, and I'm also going to decrease the strength over here like that. So up close, if you are using a high resolution material, it is well and good, but from a little bit far away, it will look pretty realistic. So always add bump displacement or a height map if you have it. It makes your material and textures pop out a little bit more. And also do check some reference online on the wood, because you need to control your specularity a little bit like that. So you don't have to make it zero specularity. So I think just a little bit, because wood is not that specular. We are going to make it something like that. Okay. And also there is one more thing that you should know, is something like roughness. So you can control the amount of, like, how rough is your material even after using texture map. So if you drag and drop it like this, and if you add color ramp, so this is the color ramp node, and if I connect this to roughness, now we have a slider that controls how intense your roughness map can be. This textures, they have two values. One is 0, which is black, and one is 1, which is white. So the 0 means it is 0 roughness, as we can see. Oops, I just removed everything. Okay, so the 0 means that it is super reflective, like it is 0 roughness, and 1 means it is highly rough material. So what this texture does is it dictates some parts as 0 and some parts as 1. So you can control that by this color ramp. So if I just increase this black slider, you'll see that my blackness of the texture is increasing like that. And now the parts are much more reflective. You can see like that, it is not very rough. You can also increase how intensity of the roughness like that. You can make this white slider go down, or else what you can do is, if you feel like your texture map, like you don't want its minimum to be zeros, like, so what you can do is you can just click over here and then increase this slider like that. So let me just preview this now. To preview any node, as I said, hit Control Shift and left mouse button, so you can preview your texture like that. And what happens when I increase or decrease this slider? So let me just increase it so that we can see the result more clearly. Now the black area is where it is going to be more shiny. So if I now increase it, you'll see that my minimum roughness is this value, which is 0.279. And if I increase it a little bit more towards the white, then this texture is almost as good as just keeping your slider to 1. So that's no use. So tweaking this values totally depends on your creative vision and what you need. You can also do that with the bump map over here. Every map that is black and white, you can use this color ramp to adjust its intensity the way you want. Now here, if I preview this bump node, and if I increase or decrease it, you'll see that some part it is getting vanished because it is well above this range of 0.25, and it is getting disappeared basically. And if I increase it to white, you'll see that almost I'm losing almost all the details. But you might need this something sometimes. So yeah, do experiment with this. So this is basically the setup of any PBR texture material inside Blender. So let's just go ahead and let's finish texturing our leg over there. So I think we have added most of the nodes like that. I'm just going to go ahead and add the displacement node anyway. Let's add the bump again. Let's plug that over there, and let's put the color socket into the height channel, and let's make it non-color. Okay, it is non-color. And as we can see, the intensity is a bit too much, so I'm just going to go ahead and decrease the strength like that. I'm also going to decrease the distance a little bit more like that. Okay, so I'm happy with this result. If you are not happy, you can tweak with the sliders and get your desired results. So this is how you texture anything inside Blender, and our table is now looking kind of realistic. And even though it is low poly, if you put it somewhere far away like that, it is with the proper and good lighting, it will look really great. This is how you texture anything inside Blender. If you have any doubts, mention them in a comment section below. This project files will be available on my Ko-fi, so do check it out. Link will be in the description below. And if you want to join my Discord server, do join it. And yeah, if you found this video useful, support me by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and sharing this video if you can. Apart from that, I will see you in the next video tutorial. Hey everyone, this is Mr. Isometric, and welcome back to another part of Blender beginner tutorial series. In today's video, we are going to talk about texture painting a little bit lightly, because texture painting is a major skill in itself, and Blender has a lot to offer with this texture painting stuff, but it is underrated, and also it is not that optimized. So if you have larger models or higher resolution images, your Blender might crash or lag. Also, managing all the image textures while texture painting can get a little little bit tedious and hard to manage. That is why most of the people prefer something like Substance Painter, where you get layer based workflow, and at the end you get a final result as a PBR texture maps of your choices. So now the question is, why should you learn texture painting in Blender? So now let us say that you already have an existing asset which is textured and you want to give it a little bit different look. Then instead of going into external software to edit it, I think it is better to just do it inside Blender, which will save you a ton of time. And if you're just going to render it inside Blender, so yeah, texture painting should be your first choice. Also, if you're going to create some small stylized asset, and if you have a good knowledge of how to paint your assets, then you can totally do that in Blender itself. So that's being said, texture painting is a good skill to know as a beginner 3D artist, because the same process also applies in some other sectors. So yeah, I think that is good enough a reason to know how to texture paint inside Blender. Okay, so let's start by adding an asset to paint in our scene. So I'm going to add Suzanne the monkey, which is default inside Blender. Now this is a subdivision ready asset, so don't mind this eye mesh poking out a little bit. We can ignore that for now. So I'm just going to split my window right now and change this to shader editor. Now let's go ahead and add a material on top of it. So don't forget to rename your material. It is a good habit to have to rename your materials and mesh. Hopefully you have turned on your Node Wrangler add-on. So I'm just going to press Ctrl and T, and this is going to add an image texture, a mapping node, and a texture coordinate node. Now do note that our UV coordinate is plugged inside the vector coordinate. This is actually not needed, so you can just totally delete that node if you want. Now you need to also make sure that your model is properly unwrapped and it is not overlapping. So if we go into the edit mode, you'll see that it pre-existingly comes with a really nice UV unwrapped. So we are going to leave it to that. For texture painting, we need an image to texture on top of. So we are going to create it over here. So just click on the new button and then you can name your image something like base color. Naming doesn't matter. Now in the width and height, you are going to put the resolution of the image that you want to make. I'm going to keep it pretty low res, because with the higher resolution image texture painting, it lags a little bit. I'm going to keep it low res. Also the color, you can choose whatever color you want for the base mesh. I'm going to keep it something like this. I'm going to keep the alpha channel. If you don't want the alpha channel, you can remove it. Make sure the generated type is at the blank, and let's just create a new image. Now that you have created your new image, make sure your color space is appropriate. For this case, we are going to paint the color detail. That's why it is set to sRGB. Make sure that your image texture is selected, and also make sure that your asset is selected. And now you can either go into the texture paint mode, which I don't usually do, or you can just click over here and then click on texture paint to go inside texture painting mode. Now in Blender, you can paint on the 3D model and as well as the 2D image texture. And if you don't see your UV layout like this, that is because if you go into the edit mode and not select any of your mesh and get out of the edit mode. Now let's go back to the texture paint mode. Now you'll see whatever you have selected in the edit mode, it will only show it over here. So if I go back into the edit mode again, select everything, go back into the texture painting mode. There you go. We can see the UV layout. Now this is pretty useful when you have a nice UV unwrap. You can also paint it over here. Before we even start painting, you cannot paint inside the UV editor. You have to paint inside the image editor. Okay, and inside image editor you get a lot of options, which is something as saving your image. So I will highly recommend you to save your image even before you start painting. So create a folder something like monkey texture. Okay, and then you can save this image with 0 compression and sRGBA. Save our image. Okay, so our image is now saved. To start painting, go ahead and click your left mouse button and start painting like that, and you'll see we just painted some color information. I'm just going to undo that for now. Now you can go on top over here and then select any color you want to paint with and just start painting your model. But that's not it. If we go over here in the tools section, you will get all the tools that are mentioned over here on the top over here as well. And I find this tool menu a bit more useful than going on top and changing settings from over here. And as I said, you can paint on both 3D and 2D. So if you want to paint on 2D, you can come to your image editor and then click on the paint section. If you press T to enable your toolbar, you see that we have the same toolbar which is over here in the 3D view, same available inside the 2D view over there. And now I can start painting it over here as well. And then you can again go over here and then select any color you want, and then you can start painting it like this. Okay, I'm just going to undo it real quick. Now let's learn a little bit more about all of these tool brushes which you will be needing for texture painting inside Blender. So the first thing is our normal draw tool, and each of these tools have their own different settings which you can change. So for instance, we already talked about the color, but color also has two sections, which is the primary color and secondary color, or you can just say your color palette 1 and color palette 2. If you click on this circular icon, swap colors icon, we will swap between those two really quickly, and then you can start painting in between those two colors like this. Now the next thing is how to increase your brush size. So for that, you can either go on top over here and then change the radius manually like this. And as you can see, it is lagging a little bit, but it is because larger your brush size is, the more image texture you're going to do at once. So that's why it lags a little bit inside Blender. So I will always keep this brush size a little bit smaller like this. Let us go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier so that our mesh gets a little bit smoother. Now the amount of resolution you have on your mesh typically doesn't matter, because it totally depends on what resolution of your image is. So if I now go ahead and start painting on top of this monkey eyes like this, the thing is the fall off of this eye, it is smooth at the end. And suppose if you don't want that, then what you can do is either go into your tool section like this, and then you'll see a fall off, and then you can either manually have a custom fall off with your curve, or you can go ahead and choose any of the pre-existing presets. So suppose if I take the constant, and now if I start painting, you'll see that the results are much more harsher. If I change it to something like linear, then the linear will behave a little bit different than the constant one, and each of them have their own unique ways of adding paint to your mesh. Now I'm just going to undo it a little bit more. Now the next thing which is very useful, it is symmetry option. So I'm just going to make my fall off to soft. And if your model is symmetric, just like this monkey asset, we can see that it is symmetric on the x-axis. So if I choose the x-axis and if I now start painting it, you'll see that the thing that I do on the left, it is happening on the right, and the thing that I do on the right, it is happening on the left. Now there is one more thing. You can also adjust what type of stroke you are using. So right now we are using the space method, and you can add a little bit of jitter if you want, and this will add a jitteriness to your stroke. You can add the spacing, so it is set on 10%. If I set it to 500%, you'll see that it will actually take a long. So let me just make it a little bit shorter. So as you can see, it is placing those dot like effect, because between each stroke there is a little bit of a spacing. So usually the spacing, the less spacing you have, the more constant stroke you are going to get. You can also change between these pre-existing ones. So I will say do experiment with all of this brush stroke method. I don't know how curve works. I never use actually that. So you probably might need to experiment with that a little bit. But apart from that, that's how it works. Okay, so now you don't always have to get over here and then change the fall off and change the radius from on top over here. There is a shortcut key for that as well. So if you press F, you can increase and decrease your brush radius like this. And then if I press F again, okay, so let me just make my brush a little bit bigger. So now if I hold down shift and press F, you'll see that now I'm controlling the intensity of that fall off. So if I now go over here, and now if I start painting, you'll see that my strength has gone down. So we are controlling the strength of that brush stroke. So by this, if you keep on painting, at the end you will reach the strength of 1. So in this way you can paint lightly on top of your object like this. So you can increase the strength to 1 and you'll get the full saturation of the color. One thing you might have noticed, there is this icon over here. Now I'm using my mouse, so this won't work. But if you're using pen tablet and if you want to use the pressure to control the strength, then enable this icon over there. And if you want to control the radius with your pen tablet, then you can click on this button as well. Though I'm using my mouse right now, so it will not work. So with the pressure, you can control the radius, and with the pressure, you can control the strength. And if you make this strength to something like 0.5, and now if you start using your tablet, then the maximum pressure that your tablet allows will only give you zero point 0.5 of the strength value. Usually what I like to do is I like to keep my strength at 1, and then if I'm using my tablet, I like to control my strength from my tablet. And radius, I like to keep it constant so that I know how my strokes are going to look, so that gives me a really nice idea. So texture mask and texture, I think those things are better learn later when you are comfortable with texturing your models inside Blender, and as you are learning, you will know about them a little bit more. So now let's talk about what are these tools over here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my image clear again, and for that we can click on the color palette over there and select this eyedropper tool, and I'm going to sample this color from over here, and then I'm just going to basically erase everything back to normal. Let me just increase my brush size like this, and then let's paint everything out like that. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to select some colors. Let us say I select this brown, dark brown color like this, and we already seen that this is our draw brush tool, so you can draw anything on your mesh like this. The second is soften one, and to know more about the soften brush, I think I will create my fall off to constant, and I will just add a line like this. And now let's enable the soften tool. Let's zoom in a little bit, and if I now click and drag, you'll see that it is softening the edges. So if you want to blend between two colors, this is a really nice choice to have. So suppose, let us say, if I go ahead and if I swap it with the pink color over there, and now if I go to the soften tool and if I soften it, now it will try to merge or blend between those two colors, and it will create a new color over there. So we just merge those two colors together. Now if you want to increase the merginess of, like, say, if you want to increase pink more over the brown, what you can use is you can use this smear tool. Now if I click on the smear tool and if I smear it like this, you can see it is almost like I'm smudging the color on top of another one, and you can create this smudging effect between two colors, and then you can soften it a little bit. So this way you can blend between two textures or two colors pretty nicely together like that. So the next tool is the clone tool. Now clone tool works exactly like it works in Photoshop, and to use it you need to place your cursor where you want to clone your things from. So if I now hold down Control and left mouse button, click over there, you'll see now it will start sampling. As soon as I click my left mouse button, it is going to start sampling it from over there. And if I go up like this, wait, let me just turn on my symmetric real quick. Okay, now if I hold down left mouse button and if I start painting, you'll see that it is sampling from that point, and it is creating this same clone effect from bottom to top like this. So you'll see whatever we painted below, it is now exactly painted on the top, same exact details and same exact smear. You can also do this on other sides, but do keep in mind that when you are starting to paint it like this, you'll see that on the side view it is not working, because from this view angle I can only see that much portion of the thing. So it is also kind of based on how you are viewing it. So if I now start painting it over here, you'll see that it is painting it exactly as we can view it over there. One more thing, if you start painting with the clones tool like this, and if you suddenly stop and if you start painting it again, you'll see that you cannot just resume painting from where you started. The moment you leave your left mouse button, it is going to stop cloning and it is going to start a new clone again. So do keep in mind, using clone tool is kind of difficult, or you can say it is kind of tricky. Now the fill tool is self-explanatory. If I now go ahead and try to click on over there on that model, you'll see that it just filled my whole model with one single color. And for the monkey, I think I would like it to have this dark brown color, something near the green area like this. And then you can go ahead and start painting some more details. Let us say if I want to paint its eyes, I'm going to turn on the symmetry like this, and then I can start working on its eyes like this. Also the fall off, let us change it to smooth again, and I'm going to paint on its eyes like this. You need to have a little bit of a painting knowledge before you start painting your assets. And if you don't have a clear idea of what you are going to do with this asset, then you will find yourself struggling a little bit with texture painting inside Blender. Now, as I said, it is very useful if you have existing assets and if you want to texture on top of them. Now for the nose, you can go ahead and pick something this color, and I can paint it on top like this. You can make its mouth a little bit reddish like that. Okay. And for the ears, we can go for something like this, and then we can paint its ears like that. Okay, so you can go all out and you can texture it any ways you want. Now you're not only limited to painting the color information, but you can also paint the roughness value, metallic value if you want. So what I'm going to do over here is just create a new image texture. So I'm just going to duplicate the top one. Let's plug the UV coordinate inside the vector socket just to be sure that it is using the same UV map. I'm going to click on this X button to remove that texture, and now we are going to create a new image texture. Let's call it something like roughness. The spelling is wrong, but we are going to totally ignore that. The color, I'm going to make it fully rough like this, so value of 1. And we are going to create a new image, and also we are going to make sure that our color space is set to non-color, and we are going to plug this color information into the roughness information. So again, select your image, go back into the object mode, and again go back into the texture painting mode. And now you can see that we have our roughness image over here. So first thing I'm going to do is save that image on my PC. Now you can paint the roughness information. So roughness information can only be painted in black and white. So I'm just going to make my hue and saturation 0. So now I don't want my eyes to be rough at all. So I'm going to paint it with black value. Now black value means 0. So I'm just going to paint it, and I forgot to turn on the symmetry. So you get the same stuff for painting other things as well. Now I don't want its nose to be that specular or that smooth, so I'm going to make it less rough, something like that, and I'm going to paint that value over here. Let's make its mouth a little bit more shiny, so let's click that and let's paint it like this. I'm going to make its ear also a little bit shiny, so not that much. So I think the value of 0.5 would look great on the ear, so I'm just going to paint it like that. All right, so now we can go ahead and go back into our object mode. Now to see your result, first go ahead and save your image. So now if I go into the rendered view, you'll see that, let me just shade smooth it a little bit. Okay, so you'll see that my eyes, they are less rough. As you can see, they are reflecting light. My nose is not that rough, it is also reflecting light a little bit, and my mouth, it is also very shiny. Let's check out the ears. So as you can see, ears are also a little bit more shiny than the whole other area. So this is how you can texture paint your assets inside Blender. Now you can create another image texture, plug that into, I guess, a specular highlight. You can also paint a subsurface texture if you want. So yeah, that's how you texture paint inside Blender. And I went pretty fast because this topic is something that you should learn in depth with some other video tutorials as well. So do check out some other videos as well. I just laid out a basic setup that you should check out while you start texture painting, and I hope this video helps you kickstart your texture painting journey. I will probably not talk about sculpting in my future video because sculpting is not something that I do very often, and it is better to learn sculpting from the beginning from a professional who is doing that for years and not someone like me. Probably this is the second last video. In the next video, we are going to render the table that we made in our previous lectures. Do check my previous videos out if you haven't. Project files will be available on my Ko-fi, so do check it out. Link will be in the description below, and if you have any doubts, mention them in a comment section below, or you can join my Discord server and ask your questions over there. If you want to be a part of friendly community of 3D artists, do subscribe to my channel to support me, and like this video to help me make more such videos, or share it with your friends if they also are a beginner 3D artist. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope this video helped, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Hey everyone, this is Mr. Isometric and welcome back to another part of Blender beginner tutorial series. So in today's video, we are going to go ahead and light and render this table asset that we made in our previous videos. Now, if you haven't checked those videos out, do check them out. Or if you're here just for the lighting and rendering tutorial, tutorial, then go ahead and watch this video. So without further ado, let's get started. So we modeled this asset in proportion. Now it's time to go ahead and scale this to a real world scale. Now this is a modeling 101 and I should have told this while modeling it, but usually whenever I model anything, I just go ahead and create the full asset and then I scale it down. But if you are going to create a character and then going to rig it, what I will say is create your character in any scale or any proportion you want, and then first scale it down to the appropriate height, and after that you are going to go ahead and rig it. If you rig it first, then it will create some artifacts, some animation issues, because it is not a good idea to scale your models after they are rigged. So yeah, just keep that in mind, and let's go ahead. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the mirror modifier because I want my origin to be at the center of those legs. Again, I'm just going to go ahead, hold down shift and select the legs like this, and then I'm going to hold down shift S, and then I'm going to do cursor to selected. Okay, and now we are going to go ahead, select our legs, right click, and then we are going to say set origin to 3D cursor. Now you can go ahead and select our tabletop as well and then make its origin over there, but I think we can just put it over there. It's no big issue. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and put an empty axis over there. If you're creating an asset, it is a good practice to parent everything to a single empty. So that's what I'm going to do. So select both of them, select the empty, and then you are going to hold Control P. Now there are two options, object and keep object with transform. You can do both of them, but just to be safe, after parenting, it might happen that your objects, they move here and there, and to prevent that, you can do keep transform. And if you accidentally just don't do that, it is just this checkbox. So let me just show you that again. If you hold down Control P and just do object, you'll see that the keep transform checkbox is unchecked. If you did object and if your stuff moves around, you can always come back over here and then check this keep transform option, and your objects, if they moved around, they will just come back to their original position before they were parented to the empty. I hold down shift S again, and then I'm going to do cursor to world origin. Now this will make my 3D cursor to move to the 0, 0 location, and then I can safely go ahead and hold down shift S again and then do selection to cursor and keep offset. Now you can also do selection to cursor. It is same as keep transform, so I just like to do keep offset. There you go. And now our table is nicely at the origin. Now let's go ahead and check out the length of this thing. So it will show the length of the last object you selected. So the Z axis right now, it shows at 0.2 meters, and if I select this, it shows 1.19 meters. Now what to do in such cases? What you can do is you can add an cube like this, and then you can scale it to something, the scale that you want, so 0.57 meters. So that's how tall your table should be. And now I'm just going to apply the scale of this object because we want the scale like that. And now let's go ahead and turn on the vertex snap, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag this on that gizmo, hold down control, and then I'm going to snap it to the bottom vertex. Let me just show that in the wireframe mode. So just drag it and then hold down control and just leave your mouse. Okay, so that's now on the surface. Okay, now we need to scale our object so that it roughly fits this shape. So I'm going to select my empty. Let's go to the side view. Let's go to the wireframe mode, and I'm going to press S to scale, and we are going to scale the empty object. And now I'm just going to roughly scale it something like that. So roughly it matches something like that. Okay, and now we are going to delete the cube because we don't need it anymore. Let's hold down Z and go back to the solid view. Now there is one more thing. Your empty has this weird scaling, but your object doesn't, and this is fine, but I don't like it. So I'm just going to go ahead, select everything, and then apply the scale. Now what will happen is your empty will be on the scale of 1, and so are your object going to be. So now if I go ahead and delete this, everything just stays the way it is. But if I don't apply the scale, let me just show you what happens if we don't. So now our empty is scaled, but our objects aren't because they are in relative scale with this empty. So if I go ahead and delete the empty now, you'll see that our object has returned back to its original scale. So we don't want that. So I'm just going to select everything, apply scale, And at this point you can either delete the empty or you can keep it. It's on totally upon you. Okay, so now our table is at real world scale. Now before you start lighting and rendering, you need to ask yourself, how do you want to present this asset? Now this asset can be presented in a studio environment, something like an infinite backdrop and some studio lighting setup, or you can put it inside an environment. Now this environment can be either a shop or inside a home. So yeah, totally depends on what your criterias are. So for this tutorial, and I think it is better if we create an environment, because in that way we can use something like depth of field. So what I like is I like to put it inside an environment. So I'm going for something like a store that is presenting its table. So the first thing you are going to do is definitely I'm going to put this into that collection. So we are going to put our asset in its own collection. So we can call this something like table, and then we can create a new collection, not inside over there, outside, and let's call it as background. So anything that we are going to do, we are going to do it inside the background. So first thing is, first you need to add your camera. Press Alt G and Alt R so that we clear its rotation and location. I'm just going to turn on the screencast keys. Okay, so now I'm going to split my window into two sections. So one is going to be our camera view, which is this one. You can go ahead and turn off the overlays, though I think my screencast key stays. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and rotate our camera like this, and then grab it on the Y like that, and let's grab it on the top like this, and we are going to go ahead and rotate it down a little bit like that. Now for this asset, I think it is better if we change our resolution to something like 1080 and 1920, because this asset is a little bit vertical. So I think I would like it to be something like that. So it will fill up more space like that. Let us bring it down a little bit like that. Okay, now this is something a personal thing. So I don't like my cameras that huge. So I'm just going to first change its scale, something like that. Okay, and next thing is the pass part out. So I like to view my things from whole camera point of view. So what camera sees, that's what I see. And now I'm going to rotate my asset a little bit, because like this it looks a little bit weird. So just rotate it on the Z, something like that. Okay, so we see its four legs, and we see a little bit more of the asset itself. So now let's go ahead and create our floor. So I'm going to add a plane like that, and we are going to scale it up a little bit like that. Okay, let's apply rotation and scale. Let's duplicate this one. Let's rotate it on X 90 degree like that. Let's move it behind. There you go. Let's move it up so that it fills our camera. Okay, apply the rotation and scale. Okay, so now for the floor I want a wooden material, something like a shop might have. So let's select that. Let's select the material option, and then we are going to search for wooden floor. And I like this alternating pattern, so I'm just going to find something more suitable. And I think this looks really nice, this herringbone wooden floor, so I'm going to add that, and it is being added. So let's go into the rendered view to see our floor. So there it is, and it is looking really nice. Now it has an auto map. Now this Blender toolkit add-on, it automatically creates a new UV map and then it unwraps it, but I don't like that, so I want a little bit more control over it. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this to UV editor. So remove the auto map, and over here in the UV map itself, I'm going to go ahead and unwrap it quickly. Okay, now let's split this window. Let's make the top one shader editor. A shader, we can't find it, so just press period key. Period key. Okay, there you go. Now we have this texture over here. Now it is scaled in a procedural manner with this scale slider. You can go ahead and scale your UVs as well if you want. But I think if it has given us this scale slider, then let's just keep it like that. Let's get out of the edit mode. I'm just going to scale it via this node over here. So our table, it is standard size. So our texture, it should be something just about over there, I think. So 18.6 value, actually, you know what, let's just make it 15. Now let's just make it 18 again. Okay, so this looks good. So I'm just going to leave it till over there. Now let's select our wall. and then let's add another material for it. So instead of wooden floor, now we want a wall material. So let's type in wall and let's hit enter. So inside the wall, let's find something like whitish and concreteish. So white yellow wall. Now I don't know why they wrote yellow, but I think this looks really nice. So I'm just going to choose this one. Let's cut that, and let's remove the auto map. So I'm just going to select that plane, and then let's hit edit to go into the edit mode. Let's scroll down. Okay, let's select everything, and it is actually a really good practice just to go into the edit mode and hit unwrap once if you have something like a plane or something. So I'm just going to scale it up a little bit like that, something like that. Okay, so this looks really good. We are not going to use HDRI, by the way. So if you have noticed, we already have an HDRI in the scene. Now, if you like it, you can keep it like this and render with the HDRI itself. But I just kept the HDRI so that we can. Why are these nodes not at the center when I open anything? That is really confusing right now. Okay, there you go. So yeah, I just kept this HDRI so that we have some lighting in our scene so that we can see what textures we are applying right now. So yep, this is good. Right off the bat, you'll notice that this transition between the wooden floor and the concrete, it looks a bit unnatural. Also, the composition is a little bit weird. So I'm just going to make my wall and this go a little behind like that. Okay, we can see the HDRI, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to select this edge, and then I'm going to press G twice so that we go into the edge slide mode. And then I'm going to press C key so that it goes unclamped, and then we can just move it in the front. Now, if I don't do this, if I just move it in the front by grabbing it, you'll see that my UVs, they are stretching, and we don't want that. So that is the reason why I did this. Okay, so now our floor, it is filled. Awesome. Now for that transition, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a cube like that. Let's scale it down a little bit, and let's move it. Let's also scale it on the Y like that. Okay, now we are going to scale it on the X like that. And we just created kind of a transition between the wall and floor. I don't know what it is called, but yeah, this really helps us with some realism. So I'm just going to move it just a little bit up like that. Let's apply the rotation and scale, and we are going to also apply material for this thing. So we are going to make it wooden. So I'm just going to type in wood and press enter. After browsing with some materials, I think this will actually look really good. So I'm just going to apply that wood material, and then let's go ahead and go into the edit mode, remove the auto map because I don't like that, and then we can just go ahead U and then do a cube projection. There you go. And now we need to adjust the scale. So for that, let's just zoom in on our thing, and let's disable the overlays like that so that we can see the wood. And in the UV editor, we are going to scale it to some reasonable scale. So I think something like this makes more sense, and this looks good as well. Now whenever you're making something like this, the 50mm length, now let me just show you guys. So usually whenever you are rendering an asset, 50mm is not something that you would want to use. So let us go something like 80mm lens, and then let's move it behind. So it kind of removes some perspective. So we don't see our object in a perspective. Let's move it a little bit behind like that-ish. Okay, let's move it up a little bit. And now our asset is in focus. You know what? We should also definitely move our background a little bit more behind, something like that. Let us do that thing again. So let's grab and move it in a front. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add some other props. So I'm going to add plants, and as you can see that there are some paid ones. So what you can do is you can click on the filter and select free first. And over here, I think I will add this one. So this plant looks really good. Let's remove that. And now we have that asset in our scene. It is at the center. So let's check. Okay, so that is the root folder, and we are just going to put it over there, and let's scale it up something like that. Okay, so that plant behind is also kind of defining the scale of our scene, and also how tall is our stool itself. We can also scale it down a little bit just over there. Let's move it right over there. We can even move it right, something like that. Okay, now we are going to go ahead and duplicate that by pressing Alt D and not Shift D, because I just want its instance. And then we can put it right over here as well. And then we can rotate it, or what we can do is we can add a different asset which will be a little bit smaller. And I still think that our stool is a bit too behind. I'm just going to move my camera a little bit in the front. Okay, there is, it looks really good. And I still feel like my pot is a little bit too close. It should be something right over there. Okay, so for that, I'm just going to move everything behind that much, so something like that. And we are also going to move our ground a little bit more behind like that. Okay, hopefully nothing is clipping out of the scene. Nope, it is not. Okay, so now let's find another plant asset to put behind, something smaller so that our table is in focus. Okay, so I find this one will look actually good, so I'm just going to add that. The scale of this one feels like it is small. Now there is our decorative vase, so I'm just going to move it behind over there, something like that. Let's move it behind. Okay, we can scale it down a little bit because I don't want it to be that huge. So let over there looks nice. Let's rotate it so that something like that. Okay, so that looks good. Now the transition of that with this table, it kind of looks weird. Also, I think I will move this vase a little bit out of the picture, something like that. Let's take our camera, let's move it on the top like that, and let's rotate it down. Let's move it a little bit more top. Let's rotate it a little bit more like that, and let's pull it just a little bit behind, something like that. Okay, from this camera angle we can see a little bit detail of that hole as well, so we can see a little bit of the top surface as well, so it is a good thing. And yeah, this looks pretty good. One more thing, with the lighting we are going to highlight the table, so this blending that we see, it is not going to be affected. So yeah, now let's move on to the lighting part of this video. So let's change this to shader editor. Let's go inside the world setting and let's make it fully black, so 0. Let's go to the 3D viewport, and we don't need this UV editor anymore. Let's make our screen smaller, something like that. Okay, now let's collapse everything. Background is good. Now I'm going to make a new collection and let's call it light, and we are going to do a 3-point light setup. So how to do that? So first thing, we are going to add in a light, and we are going to add an area light. Now usually I like to work with area light. They are easy to use and easy to set up. The first thing we want to do with our lighting is, let me turn on the annotations. Okay, so we first need to cover at least 90% of our model with some light. So let us say, let me turn on the overlays. Okay, so our light will be from this direction, and it is going to cover almost this much area, and this is going to be our fill light. So let's do that. So I'm just going to rotate it something like this. Also, you need to be inside the rendered view. Turn off the overlays so that it is a bit performant in that way. Now let's go ahead and manipulate our light. So we are going to move it behind, something like that, and let's rotate it on the x-axis like that. By the way, I just did a local rotation. You can either do that by going over there, and then as you can see, this is our local rotation. But instead of changing it again and again, you can just hit R and then X. Now this is a global rotation. If I press X again, this is now doing a local rotation. So I'm just going to also go into the light properties, increase the scale a little bit, something like that, because I want softer shadows. And now I'm just going to grab it and then move it down like this. Let's rotate it on the Z like that, and let's increase the power, something like that. Okay, let's grab it behind, let's move it behind a little bit. Let's increase the scale, something like that, and let's increase the power again. So for now, this will work for now. Now what we are going to do is we are going to add in a fill light. So basically this is our main light, which is covering 90% of our asset. Now we are going to add a fill light. Now what is a fill light and why do we want to add it? Let me turn on the overlay. Now as you can see, we have this darker area over here. This darker area should not be that dark, so we are going to add another light that will fill this harsh shadow. Now we do need shadows, reveal the shape of our asset. That is why shadows are important, and I think Blender Guru also says that a lot, like do not fear the shadows. So we are just going to move our light over there, and we are going to rotate it something like this. We can also scale it down a little bit, something like that, and then let's reduce the intensity of it. So we do want shadows but not this much, so I'm just going to add it something like that, and because of shadows now we can see this edge of this our table over there, and we can just lit it just a bit, that much. Okay, and we cannot see the edge over here, so I'm just going to go ahead and rotate it a little bit like that. Okay, and let's move it on the Y like this. Let's rotate it again a little bit. Wait. Okay, so now we can totally see the edge over there. Now let's go ahead and disable our fill light. Okay, it is still lighting up 90% of our scene. Okay, and let's disable the main light, and yep, it is looking really nice. Now as I said, this is inside an environment, and as we can see that we don't have that environment yet, like it is open from this side. Now let us say we have a light on the top of this table, like ceiling light, so we can add that next. So I'm just going to press Shift A, and then we are going to add in an area light again, and let's move it on the top like this, something at that height. Okay, and then we can increase the strength something like this. Okay, we can also go ahead and make its shape a little bit rectangular, something like that. Let's move it behind a little bit like that. Let's rotate it, something that is focused on this chair. So let me rotate it again, and let's try to increase the power. That looks good, and also it is kind of separating our asset from the background itself. We can totally see the edges, but I think what we should do is let's try adding a spotlight. So let's just go ahead and add a spotlight. Let's rotate it towards our table like that, and I'm just going to increase the power. Okay, so spotlight actually looks really good. I might just keep it, so I'm just going to move it behind something like this, right over there. Let's rotate it over there. Now let's increase the radius so that we get a little bit softer shadows. Okay, you know what, let's just disable the other lights and let's just watch it from this view. And now we are going to increase the spot size, something like that. Okay, now do not fear how big it is. We are also going to check the blend angle. So I think this blend angle would be nice. With the radius, as you can see, we get a more softer shadows, and with zero radius we get the harsher shadows. So I need softer shadows like that, and let's rotate it a little bit more, something like this. If I move it right over there, nope, I think this is better. Okay, so now let's turn on all the lights, and this is our final result kind of. But still you can do one more thing. As this is, inside an environment, there might be a window on the left hand side. So we are going to add another area light, and then we are going to rotate it on the Y, something like that, and let's make it 90 degrees, something like this. And let's move it over there, let's move it down, and let's scale it up, something like that. Let's move it, okay, let's go to the side view, and let's just move it up a little bit more, decrease the scale, move it over there. Okay, and now without it, okay, as you can see, with it and without it, it doesn't change anything much more. So we are just slightly going to increase the strength. So now it is something like an environment light, something a light coming from a window over there. So if we disable other lights, you'll see something like this. Size, if you reduce it, you'll see some shadows of the plants on the backdrop over there. So if I disable like enable all the other lights, let's increase the strength, something like that. And I'm also going to increase the decreasing size, actually feels really good, but I'm just going to keep it something like that, so 3.4. We can also rotate this a little bit like that. Let's move it right over there, or we might just move this base a little bit over there. Let's move it behind a little bit. Okay. Okay, this looks really good and I'm happy with this. So now let's go ahead and select our camera. Now check the depth of field, and then we are going to choose our this tabletop as our focusing point. And first thing first, we are going to make it all the way to the 0.1, and we are slowly going to increase it. Now this like this small depth of field makes it look like a miniature. So we are slowly going to increase it. So mostly 1.2 feels really nice, but I think this is also not looking correct. So we are just going to keep on increasing. So 2.1 to 2.8 value is really nice depth of field for something. Let me just go 2.4. Okay, let's go ahead and do 2.6. Okay, we are going to keep it at 2.6 for now. There is one more thing that we have to do. This legs, the bump map on it is way too harsh, so I'm just going to go ahead into shader editor. Let's change it to object type and select this object, and we are going to tone down the bumpness. This looks fine. Okay, now there is one more thing on the floor. I don't know why it doesn't just show the nodes right away. We are going to add an ambient occlusion node, so let's just shift A and type in ambient occlusion, and we are going to drop it in between the color channel like that. We can increase the distance, something like 2.8. Now you probably don't have to go that far. So if I press M, so the results are kind of similar. We can't see any change. Let's preview that. Okay, so I think my Blender kind of bugged and it is not updating. So let me just go back to the solid mode. So we are back after an Blender crash, and I had to relive the scene because I forgot to save, and there were no autosave or recovery option available. So yeah, here we are, and I see that we have some dark area over there. And I think the depth of field that we added, it also got vanished. So I'm just going to add it again. So 2.6 was it, okay, and then we are going to select our tool top like that. I'm just going to add another area light on the side over here. Let's rotate it on something like that, and then we are going to keep its intensity like really low, so something like 18 or something. So without it, with it, like just a little bit of illumination, not too much. Also we are going to rotate it more towards the background like that. So yeah, this is the lighting setup. It might look a little bit different because I definitely made some changes after it crashed. Okay, so now the thing remained is how to render your things. So I'm just going to collapse this again. Now the render settings for low end PCs, if your graphic card is not that good, switch to CPU, and then you can also check this open shading language so that the rendering is purely done by your CPU itself and no graphic drivers are used. After that, the sampling for the CPU, sample count, keep it as low as possible. If you have a nice CPU, then you can maximum, you should definitely try to go for 500. Above that, if it is a still render, so this is not going to be an animation, it is going to be still render, so we can safely go for something like 1000 samples. But if you're not, if it is an animation, I will definitely say go 64 or 32. It is going to look better. Also, one more thing, if your resolution is 1920 or 1080, you can safely increase the sample count more than 64 or go 500, even 1000. But if you're going for something like a 4K render, then the sample count goes down drastically. So you don't even have to go 500 or 1000 samples. 32 or even 8 samples would be really good if it is a still image. And even for animation, if you are rendering it in 4K, then sample count must go down. You should not, definitely not keep it 1000, because it is kind of useless to keep it that high. Then denoising, the denoiser, open image denoiser. Now if your graphics card doesn't have RTX ray tracing cores, then definitely keep it to open image denoiser. If your graphics card supports RTX, then ray tracing, then definitely go for OpticX. Your denoising will be much faster. Now the pre-filter, keep it at accurate, or if you need faster results, then obviously go for fast. Now passes, the albedo and normal, I will say definitely keep it at albedo and normal, so that your both color and normal shadow information gets correctly calculated. Quality, again, if you are on low end side, definitely go for fast. If you are medium, balanced, and if you have a decent PC build, then definitely go for high. Use GPU, if your GPU is good enough, you can use that. And then let's go to the performance. Now over here, there might be some number like 2048 or 1024. If you're on a CPU, then I will definitely say go for something like 200 or something like 64, a smaller tile size, because CPU calculates everything in smaller tile size. If you have a powerful GPU, then you can disable this entirely, or you can use some higher values like 500 or 1000, because GPUs, they compute things in bigger chunks. So definitely experiment with these values. For CPU, if you keep it like really low, then the render time will be higher. So you need to experiment with these values and then find something that is suitable for your hardware. The next thing is the color management. Now if I go back into the rendered view and let's disable the overlays. Also, I think I'm on my CPU right now. Let me just go ahead and make it a GPU again, because my GPU is much more faster. Okay, now it is not lagging. Okay, now AGX is the newest transform for the Blender, and also the Chronos PBR neutral. I don't know what that is. So the Filmic was the default before, and now it is AGX. The difference between them is that one has more color spectrum and another doesn't. So AGX basically sees more wider range of colors, and the look, it is set to high contrast. Now I like to set it to high contrast. You can set it to none if you want. You can also go for punchy, or you can just select the medium high contrast, which is default, or you can just go to the high contrast. I like high contrast, and then some people also like to play with some exposure values, like increase the exposure, decrease the gamma, something like that. It makes their render a bit more appealing. So yeah, do play with these values if you want. Also, there is one more thing in Blender with this view transforms. If you set this to false color, you'll notice that our chair, it has now a heat map, and this heat map says how lit is your scene. So basically, red means it is overlit, and blue means it is underlit, and the gray value is kind of zero exposure. Basically, it's like zero EV, like this thing over here. So something like this would actually make your render look up pretty good. You should definitely have like this gray value in your render. So now if I switch back to AGX, you'll see my render looks a little bit much more nicer than before. So this value over here, if I copy it and let's make it 0 again. So between this and this, there is not like there is definitely a difference, and you know, this actually looks really good. So to have that gray value a little bit on your scene, it makes it look a little bit nicer. So I'm just going to keep it like that because I really like this look. So these are the settings. Now if you have a higher end system, something like mine, then you can definitely go for GPU, and then the sample count, you can make it something like 500. I'm going to make it 500, and then I'm going to use my GPU with Optics X. Optic X by default uses GPU, so that setting just got disabled. The sample count 1000, yes, I'm going to keep it like that. Okay, and now for the render. So you can go on the top over here and then click on render image if you have a single image to render, or you can render the whole animation and it will go by from your starting frame to your end frame, and then it will render the whole image sequence. Okay, now the output tab over here in the output properties, you can see we have an output tab and then we have some settings. So if you want to render a video directly, you can choose it ffmpeg over here, or in our case we want to render an image which is going to be png. I don't want any compression and I definitely don't want an alpha channel, so I'm happy with rgb. Now 8-bit color depth is fine with most of the cases. If you go 16-bit, it is going to take longer to render, and also it is going to make your render file a little bit heavy. Also you can see that we also have a color management tab over here, so I'm just going to keep it at follow scene. I don't want to override anything. And now from over here you can choose a path where you want to save your render, or else what you can do is you can just go back to solid mode and press F12 to start rendering. This is our rendered file. Now suppose if you accidentally click on this X button, you can bring that render again by pressing F11, and when you press F11 your render viewer will be over there. Now from over here you can go ahead and save as, and then you can save your render anywhere. So I'm just going to save it something like table render 1, and then again if you want to compress the image you can compress it over here. Changing it over 16 bits over here is not going to do anything. And rgb, yep, that is the thing that I want. I'm just going to hit save, and there you go, you just saved the render on your pc. So that's basically it. So that's how you light and render inside Blender. And this was our final video on this beginner tutorial series. In future, we are also going to learn a little bit more about Blender in depth. And we haven't talked about geometry node or shader editor or even sculpting that much, because it is better to learn them separately instead of doing it in a beginner tutorial series. Because if I include that in this series, then it will be getting a bit too overwhelming at once. So that's how you do lighting and rendering inside Blender. Project files will be available on my Ko-fi, link will be in the description below. If you have any doubts, ask them in a comment section below, or you can join my Discord server. If you learned something new, if this video was any helpful, then do like, and to support me, subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends if they are into 3D art. And that being said, I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Bye bye.